Rain tapped the living room window in a patient rhythm. Seattle was still half asleep, sky the color of wet concrete streetlights glowing in the puddles below. Ethan Cole stood barefoot on cold linoleum and watched the coffee maker spit and sigh. The apartment smelled like grounds and dish soap. He checked his bank balance on instinct. 2,000 and change. On the fridge, Lucy's latest drawing was held by a magnet shaped like a whale. 2 stick figures under an umbrella, one tall, one small. Ethan touched the paper once, then turned away before it could hurt today. He flipped the phone face down and focused on the small things that could be made orderly. Bread, butter, a clean knife. 2 slices laid flat like a promise. From the table came the crisp sound of paper folding. Lucy sat hunched over a square of blue origami paper, brow furrowed in concentration. Her hair was a sleep tangle, her rocket backpack parked by the door like a second body. She pressed a crease with her fingernail, precise, then looked up. Is today pancake day? Today is Tuesday, Ethan said. Tuesday is toast day. Lucy's mouth tightened. Pancakes are better. Agreed. He buttered the bread to the edges, then trimmed the crusts the way she demanded, neat and even. Saturday. Chocolate chip pancakes. Extra chips. She studied him like a tiny lawyer. How extra unreasonable, he said. The corners of her mouth betrayed her. Deal. Ethan poured coffee into his travel mug, then took a quick sip from a chipped cup. The heat woke his throat first, then the rest of him. He glanced at the clock. 6:18. Hair, he said. Lucy groaned with theatrical suffering and slid off her chair. She returned with a brush and a look that said this was personal. It hurts, she warned. It hurts because you fight it, Ethan said, but he kept his voice soft. He crouched, ran his fingers through the knots, then guided the brush through slowly. Lavender shampoo rose off her scalp, chosen because the bottle had a cartoon crane, and Lucy had insisted it was lucky. You're pulling, she accused. I'm persuading, he said. She leaned into his shoulder anyway. When the last knot gave up, Ethan tied her hair back with a purple elastic. Lucy patted the ponytail like she was testing it for sturdiness. I look normal, she announced. You look like you, he said, and kissed the top of her head. Lucy climbed onto her chair again and turned the blue paper in her hands. A wing appeared. Then another sharper. She held it up for him to inspect. It's a crane, she said. Ms. Whitaker says cranes mean you get a wish if you make 1,000. 1,000 is a lot, Ethan said. Lucy shrugged like math had never scared her. I'm strong. Lucy dug into her pocket and produced a plastic badge on a red lanyard, a pretend office ID laminated crookedly with a sticker cat photo. Under it, in bold block letters, Lucy Cole, important person. She held it against Ethan's wallet, where his real keycard lived. Beep, she said in a robot voice. Access granted. Ethan's mouth twitched. To what? To breakfast, Lucy said. To pancake day. He handed the badge back. Not every door is yours to open, he said. Lucy's eyes narrowed. Why not? Because some doors are private, Ethan said. He chose each word the way he chose safe roads in bad weather. You knock, you wait, you ask. Lucy stared at the badge as if it contained instructions she could learn by force. Even if you really want to go in, especially then. She nodded once solemn and clipped the lanyard around her neck. Ethan packed her lunch with practiced efficiency. Sandwich, apple slices, juice box, a folded note with a stick figure rocket and the words, "You got this." He slid everything into the backpack, hoisted it onto Lucy's shoulders, and watched her wobble. Okay, astronaut, he said. Careful. I'm training, Lucy said and marched to the door. Ethan moved through his own checklist. Phone, keys, key card. He tugged his work bag strap over his shoulder and reached for a tie on the back of a chair. He chose navy, tightened it in the hallway mirror until it sat straight, and kept his eyes off the second toothbrush in the bathroom cup. Outside, the air was damp and sharp. Ethan opened their umbrella, a black one with a bent rib that never sat right. Lucy tucked herself under it and still got wet rain beating on her lashes. She hopped over a puddle and landed in another, then pretended it was part of the mission. The hallway smelled like wet carpet. Mrs. Alvarez from 3B opened her door as they passed cardigan pulled tight. Morning, Ethan, she said. Morning, Lucy. Lucy waved like a tiny mare. Mrs. Alvarez's gaze lingered on Ethan's face, reading the tired lines. You working late again? Probably not too late, Ethan said. In the car, Lucy hummed a tune from school off-key and confident. Ethan drove through gray streets and red brake lights, wipers keeping time. Lucy pointed at the fogged window and drew a crescent moon with her fingertip. When I'm an astronaut, she said, I'm going to send you a postcard from the moon, from everywhere, Lucy said and tapped at the glass. "All right, dear Dad, doors are easy up here." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "I'll still knock," he said. Riverside Elementary rose out of the drizzle, a brick building, with a bright banner flapping over the entrance. The drop-off lane crawled. Parents moved with umbrellas raised like shields. Kids spilled out and ran for the doors, backpacks bouncing. Lucy unbuckled fast. She was already halfway gone when Ethan said, "Hey!" She paused, one hand on the door. "What time?" Ethan asked. Lucy rolled her eyes, affectionate and impatient. 3:15. "And if I'm not there?" She stared at him like he'd asked if the son planned to show up. "You're there," she said. The certainty landed in his chest, heavy and warm and dangerous. Ethan nodded. "Right," he said. "I'm there." Lucy climbed out, adjusted her rocket backpack, and joined the stream of kids. Halfway to the gate, she stopped and turned back. Ethan's heart lifted, ready for the last wave. Lucy raised her badge. "Beep," she called. "Don't forget." Ethan lifted 2 fingers in a salute. "Access granted," he called back. She laughed and ran again. This time she did not look back. Ethan sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel, watching the doors swallow the last of the children. Rain softened the world into glassy blur. He reached into the cup holder and found something new, a small blue paper crane Lucy must have slipped there when he wasn't looking. The wings were slightly uneven. One crease was too sharp. It still held its shape. He set it on the dashboard where he could see it, then put the car in gear and eased into traffic. Seattle folding around him in wet gray layers, his real keycard, a hard rectangle in his wallet. The blue paper crane rode the dashboard as Ethan guided the car into downtown, its uneven wings trembling with each seam in the road. Rain slicked the asphalt to a mirror, turning brake lights into long red smears. He kept one hand steady on the wheel and the other close to the cup holder, as if the small folded thing might lift off and disappear if he stopped watching it. North Peak Systems rose from the gray like a polished blade. Glass and steel, crisp edges, no softness anywhere. Ethan pulled into the underground garage where the air smelled like exhaust and damp concrete. He killed the engine and sat for one extra breath, letting the silence press against his ribs. He picked up the crane and turned it once in his fingers. The paper was warm from the sunless dashboard heat. He set it carefully into the shallow pocket of his work bag beside his laptop charger and a pack of gum, and zipped the bag as if sealing it safe. In the lobby, the security gates blinked green. Ethan fished his keycard from his wallet. The plastic felt colder than it should. Beep. The turnstile released with a soft click. He stepped through and joined the tide of commuters moving toward elevators, shoes tapping marble umbrellas, dripping into black mats. A screen over the reception desk looped a company promo video, with smiling actors in pristine offices, hands shaking, graphs rising. Ethan watched it for half a second and looked away. Elevator doors opened. He rode up with a man in a wet trench coat who smelled like peppermint, and a woman who stared at her phone so hard she could have been drilling through it. Nobody spoke. Nobody made eye contact. The building carried them the way a river carries driftwood. On the 8th floor, the air changed. The hum of voices, the faint burn of printer toner, the steady, anxious rhythm of keyboards. Ethan stepped out into an open-plan maze of low walls and adjustable desks. His corner spot was near a window, but the view was mostly the concrete face of the building next door, close enough to count bolts when he needed something to stare at during meetings. He slipped into his chair and woke his laptop. Slack messages stacked like small demands. Maya Patel, 2 pods over, raised a hand without looking up. "Morning." "Morning," Ethan said. Jordan Lee rolled by on an office chair like it was a skateboard. "Hey, Cole, you survived the rain." "It is not trying very hard," Ethan said. Jordan grinned. "Give it time." Ethan's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He ignored it. He knew it was not Lucy. School did not call at 8 in the morning unless something was wrong, and Lucy's last wrong had been a missing purple crayon. He let himself believe she was fine, because the alternative was a dark hallway in his mind he did not have time to walk down. He opened the quarterly deck and scrolled through slides with dense tables. Retention rates, implementation timelines, error counts, numbers that looked clean and orderly, even when the reality behind them was not. He checked the formatting the way some people checked their pulse. Across the aisle, someone laughed too loudly at something on a screen. A printer whirred and spat out pages, then jammed. Someone swore under their breath. Coffee cups clinked. Ethan pulled his travel mug closer and took a sip. The coffee was bitter and hot. He welcomed it. It put a line of heat down his throat and gave his hands a reason to move. On his second monitor, a document sat open in a minimized window. a plan he had written on lunch breaks and late nights, a streamlined onboarding framework, fewer handoffs, automated verification, one point of ownership per client so nobody could pretend a problem belonged to somebody else. He had titled it plainly, like plain would make it safer process improvement proposal. A month ago he had printed it and walked into Brent Klein's office with the paper trembling just slightly in his grip. Brent had glanced at the first page, then at the clock, then at Ethan. "This is ambitious," Brent had said, not as a compliment. "It saves time," Ethan had replied. "It saves money. It stops errors before they become refunds." Brent had tapped the top corner of the proposal against his desk, like he was aligning a stack. "We do not need a revolution. We need incremental improvement." "It is not a revolution," Ethan had said too fast. He had heard the desperation in his own voice and hated it. Brent had leaned back in his chair, hands folded behind his head. "Stay in your lane, Ethan. Keep your head down, do your job, and you will keep moving. That is how this works." Ethan had walked out with his proposal still in his hands, as if returning it to him erased the fact it existed. Now the document sat on his screen like a quiet bruise. He minimized it again when a shadow fell across his desk. Brent Klein stood at the edge of Ethan's pod tie, slightly crooked eyes a little too shiny. Brent looked like he had slept in his suit. "Cole," Brent said. Ethan straightened. "Morning." Brent glanced around as if the whole floor might be listening. He lowered his voice anyway. "Preston is out." Ethan blinked. "Tom." "Fever," Brent said. "Or he says it is a fever." He sounded like he was dying. Could be the theater version of dying. Ethan pictured Tom Preston's heavy sighs and dramatic pauses, the way he always made problems feel like storms instead of weather. "Do you need me to cover something?" Brent did not answer immediately. He rubbed his forehead with 2 fingers. "The quarterly package has to go upstairs by 9:45. Ethan's stomach tightened. Upstairs as an executive. Brent's mouth twitched. "Yes, upstairs, upstairs." Ethan kept his face steady. "Who usually delivers it?" "Tom does," Brent said. "Or he sends an intern. We are out of interns. We are out of time. And I am not going up there." Ethan knew what he was hearing. Brent was asking without asking. Ethan glanced at the clock in the corner of his screen. 8:23. He did the math automatically, like calculating rent. If he left his desk at 9:20, if the elevator did not stall, if the security gates behaved, if he did not get pulled into a fire drill or a random meeting, he could deliver the packet and still be back in time for the 10 o'clock client call. He also did another math that sat in his chest. The elevator up to executive floors required clearance. It required confidence. It required walking into a world that had never noticed him. "Okay," Ethan said. Brent exhaled as if he had been holding his breath. "Good, good. You are reliable." The words were meant as praise. They landed like a collar. Brent gestured with his chin toward the printer alcove. "Print 2 copies, full color. Put it in the black folder, the one with the silver logo. Make it look like we know what we are doing." Ethan nodded. "Where exactly does it go?" Brent's eyes flicked away. "Conference B, not her office, not her assistant's desk. Conference B, there is a schedule. Somebody has it. Ask around." Then Brent added almost as an afterthought, "Do not bother Ms. Hart." Vivienne Hart, the CEO. Ethan had seen her once from a distance, a sleek figure moving through the lobby with a small entourage. He remembered her hair dark and pulled back, and the way people subtly stepped out of her path without being told. She had not looked at anyone, not because she was rude, but because she did not need to. The building turned toward her, the way iron turned toward a magnet. On the 8th floor, people talked about her in careful half-sentences. "She is brilliant. She does not forget. She does not smile." Ethan had never wanted to be important enough to be in her line of sight. He pulled up the file and sent it to print. Color pages slid out in crisp stacks, warm to the touch. He checked each chart for alignment, each header for correctness. He slipped the reports into the black folder with the silver North Peak logo and closed it gently as if it might crack. At 9:18, Ethan stood and rolled his shoulders once. He smoothed his tie. He checked his breath by exhaling into his palm. Coffee, mint gum, normal. Maya glanced over. "Where are you going with the funeral folder?" "Executive fear floor," Ethan said. Her eyebrows lifted. "Oof, good luck." Jordan leaned back in his chair. "If you see Ms. Hart, do not blink." Ethan gave a thin smile. "Noted." He walked to the elevator bank with the folder tucked under his arm like a shield. The hallway lights were too bright a white glare that made everyone look slightly sick. He pressed the button. The elevator arrived with a soft chime that sounded too pleasant for the way his stomach felt. Inside the elevator was full of people wearing slightly nicer coats than his slightly cleaner shoes. Nobody held a folder. Nobody looked nervous. Ethan faced the doors and watched his reflection in the polished metal. His eyes looked darker than they had in the bathroom mirror that morning. He adjusted his tie again and forced his hands to go still. The elevator climbed. Floors ticked upward on a red display. 10, 11, 12. At 13, most people stepped out. The car emptied until only Ethan remained alone with his own breathing and the steady rise. 14. The doors opened to a hallway that did not belong to the same company. The carpet was thick and dove gray. The air smelled faintly of citrus and something expensive that did not want to be identified. Abstract art hung on the walls in frames that looked heavier than his kitchen table. A desk sat at the entrance like a checkpoint. Behind it, a woman in a cream blouse typed without looking up. Her hair was pulled into a tight knot. Her posture was straight in a way that suggested this was not posture, it was default. Ethan took 2 steps and stopped at a respectful distance. She looked up, then eyes sharp and neutral. Name. Ethan Cole, he said. Analytics. I am delivering the quarterly package. Her gaze dropped to the folder, then to his face, then back to the folder. Who asked you to deliver it? Brent Klein, Ethan said. Tom Preston is out sick. She nodded once as if filing the information away in a drawer marked, People who are not my problem. She tapped something on her keyboard, and a small printer beside her spit out a sticker. She tore it off and pressed it to the inside cover of the folder with smooth efficiency. Conference B, she said. Second door on the left. You leave it on the table. You do not wait. You do not enter any other room. Ethan's throat tightened. Understood. Her eyes held his for a beat longer than necessary. Not threatening, not kind, simply assessing. Ms. Hart is in meetings. Do not interrupt. Ethan nodded. I will not. She slid a guest badge across the desk. It was heavier than Lucy's pretend one, clipped to a black lanyard. North Peak Visitor. Ethan reached for it, and the metal clip snapped shut with a hard click. Thank you, he said. She returned to her screen as if he had already disappeared. Ethan clipped the badge to his belt and started down the hallway. His shoes made almost no sound on the carpet, which somehow made every step feel louder. The folder pressed against his ribs. He walked past a closed door marked Suite A in simple lettering, the kind that looked like it belonged on a museum exhibit. At the second door on the left, a plaque read, Conference B. Ethan stopped. He drew in a careful breath. The citrus scent hovered clean and sharp. He adjusted the folder in his arm and reached for the handle. Ethan turned the handle. The latch gave without resistance, and the door swung inward on hinges so quiet they felt unreal. He expected a conference room, a long table, a row of chairs, the smell of burned coffee and dry erase markers. Instead, he stepped into a private office. It was too large for one person. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped to the far wall, framing a slate-gray sky and the dull shine of Puget Sound beyond the buildings. Rain skated down the glass in thin lines. The carpet was pale and thick. The furniture was spare and severe, all sharp edges and dark wood. Even the air felt curated cool and clean, like it had been filtered twice before it was allowed inside. Vivienne Hart stood near the center of the room. She was not seated behind a desk. She was not in a meeting. She was not on a call. She was in the middle of changing. Her blazer hung on the back of a chair. A garment bag lay open on the sofa. A dress black and structured was draped over one arm like it had just been lifted from a hanger. The collar of her blouse was undone, her sleeves pushed up, and one strap of a smoothing slip had slid off her shoulder. Her hair was pinned back with quick, practical clips, not the polished twist Ethan had seen in photos. There was a faint flush at the base of her throat, as if the room had been warm a moment ago. Her head snapped up. Her eyes met his. For a second, nothing moved. Not her, not Ethan, not the rain on the windows. The folder slipped from Ethan's arm. Paper spilled across the threshold, white pages sliding over carpet like skates. One sheet fluttered and landed face up. A chart of retention rates, neat and pointless. Another page caught on the edge of the door and tore with a soft, ugly sound. Ethan heard his own breath arrive late, like a person running to catch up. "Aye," he said, and the word died. His throat tightened around the rest. Vivienne's expression shifted in a controlled sequence. Surprise, then recognition, then a stillness that looked like discipline. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she meant to speak, but no sound came out. Her gaze flicked to the scattered pages, then back to Ethan's face. Ethan's hands lifted empty palms, angled forward in a reflexive surrender. "I am sorry," he managed. "Wrong room." His voice sounded too loud in the clean, silent space. Vivienne did not move toward him. She did not cover herself with a frantic gesture. She only drew in a slow breath and squared her shoulders as if she could put armor back on by aligning her bones. Ethan stepped backward. His heel caught the edge of one paper. It slid. He stumbled more clumsy than a grown man should be and grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. The visitor badge clipped to his belt scraped the wood with a faint plastic squeak. Vivianne's eyes dropped to the badge, then to his keycard lanyard, then back to him. Ethan felt heat climb up his neck. His mind sprinted ahead, calculating consequences the way it calculated bills. Fired. Escorted out. Blacklisted. Lucy, 3:15. He backed into the hallway and reached for the handle with shaking fingers. He pulled the door toward him too fast, like a child caught in a forbidden place. The door shut with a soft click that sounded final. Ethan stood there staring at the wood grain, waiting for the world to tell him what happened next. Nothing happened. No alarm, no shouting, no footsteps pounding down the hall. Only the distant hush of HVAC and the muted tap of rain against glass somewhere behind that door. His lungs finally remembered their job. He sucked in air, then let it go in a shaky stream. His fingers were numb. He flexed them once, twice. The hallway seemed longer than it had a minute ago. The carpet swallowed sound. The abstract painting beside him showed a blur of blue and gray that suddenly looked like water swallowing someone. Ethan crouched to gather the spilled papers. His hands trembled enough that he missed the first one. He picked it up on the second try and smoothed the corner as if the sheet might forgive him. A crease ran through a bar graph. He pressed it flat anyway. He stacked pages quickly. Too quickly. The paper edges refused to align, skewing no matter how he tapped them against his palm. His pulse hammered hard enough to make his vision pulse with it. Lucy's voice came back to him sharp and small. "Not every door is yours to open." Ethan swallowed. He glanced toward the checkpoint desk. Naomi Reyes was still seated, still typing, posture unchanged. She did not look up. If she had heard anything, her face did not admit it. She was a wall that did not react to weather. Ethan stuffed the papers back into the folder. His hands fumbled with the cover. The silver logo flashed under the overhead lights. He closed it, then opened it again because a page corner was sticking out. He forced it in and closed it properly. He stood. His knees felt loose, unreliable. The door he had opened did not have a plaque. In the moment before, he had been so focused on his own breathing that he had not checked. 2 doors, identical handles, identical wood. He had stopped at the wrong one because his brain was a crowded room and somebody had turned off the lights. Ethan turned his head and found the plaque now half a step farther down the hall. Conference B. The letters were small, understated, like everything up here. A thin sheen of sweat broke at his hairline. He wiped it with his wrist and tried to make his face blank. He forced his shoulders down and his spine straight, as if posture could erase what he had just seen and what she had just seen. He walked to Conference B. His shoes made no sound. It felt like walking on a carpeted stage with no audience, except he could feel eyes on him anyway, through walls, through glass, through his own skin. At Conference B, he paused with the folder in his hands. He knocked once lightly because Lucy's voice was still in his head, and because it felt like the only sane thing to do. No answer. He tried the handle. This latch resisted for a heartbeat, then gave, and the door opened into a real conference room. A polished table, 6 chairs, a pitcher of water with 2 empty glasses, a screen mounted on the wall, the faint smell of coffee that had been here earlier and left. Relief hit him so hard it made him dizzy. He stepped inside, crossed to the center of the table, and placed the folder down like it was fragile. His fingertips lingered for half a second on the cover, then lifted away. He backed out, closed the door gently, and stood in the hallway again. He did not look at the door he had opened by mistake. He walked back toward Naomi's desk. Naomi looked up as he approached. Her expression was the same neutral line as before. If she noticed his pale face or the slight shake in his hands, she did not acknowledge it. "Delivered?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. His voice sounded steady, which surprised him. Naomi's eyes held his for a moment. There was something in the pause. Not accusation, not sympathy. Something closer to calibration, like she was measuring how much trouble she might be about to manage. "You can return your visitor badge," she said. Ethan unclipped it and set it on the desk. The plastic made a small tap against the wood. Naomi slid it aside without looking down. "Go straight to the elevators," she said, quiet enough that it felt private. "Do not linger." Ethan nodded once. He walked away before his face could betray him. At the elevator bank, he pressed the button with a finger that did not feel like his. The doors took too long to open. When they did, the car was empty. He stepped in and turned to face the doors. The mirrored panel showed a man with a tie too tight and eyes that looked slightly haunted. He lifted a hand and loosened the knot by a fraction, then let his hand drop. The movement felt pointless. Nothing about this could be loosened. The elevator descended. 14 became 12, then 10. By the time he reached 8, his chest was still tight, but he could breathe. That was something. The doors opened to the familiar hum of his floor. Phones ringing, keyboard clatter, somebody laughing at a video. The ordinary world indifferent. Ethan walked back to his desk as if nothing had happened. Jordan popped his head over the partition. "You live?" Ethan set his bag down carefully. "I delivered it." Maya glanced up from her monitor. "You look like you saw a ghost." Ethan's mouth tried to form a smile and failed. "Just a lot of carpet up there." Jordan snorted. "Told you, do not blink." Ethan sat and woke his screen, but the numbers blurred. His fingers hovered over the keyboard without landing. He could still see the office with the windows and the rain, and the dress draped over Vivian's arm, like a question he was not allowed to ask. He opened Slack. He stared at a message and did not read it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Ethan froze. He pulled it out slowly, afraid of what it might be. The screen lit with a notification from the school app, a generic reminder about Spirit Day. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding and cleared the alert. His hands were still shaking. He shoved them under his thighs to keep them from showing. An hour passed in fragments. Ethan answered an email, joined a call, spoke when spoken to. His voice came out normal, which felt like a lie he was telling with his whole body. At 10:42, his phone rang. Unknown number. He stared at it until the ringtone stopped. A second later, it rang again. His stomach dropped. He accepted the call. "Ethan Cole," he said. A woman's voice came through crisp and controlled. "Mr. Cole, this is Naomi Reyes' executive office." The floor seemed to tilt a fraction. "Ms. Hart would like to see you at 2 o'clock, Naomi said. "Executive floor. Suite A, please confirm." Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked down at his hands. They were still resting on the desk as if they belonged to someone calm. "Yes," he said, "I will be there." "Thank you," Naomi replied. 2 o'clock. The line went dead. Ethan sat very still, listening to the office around him as if he had never heard it before. A printer whirred. Someone coughed. A chair squeaked. He opened his calendar. His 2 o'clock slot was empty. He clicked it and typed meeting. He left the title blank for a beat, then closed the entry without saving. On his screen, the minimized window of his process improvement proposal sat in the corner like a secret. Ethan did not open it. He did not close it. He stared at the gray rain outside the window between the concrete bolts and tried to make his heartbeat match the steady rhythm of work, the rhythm of a day that was supposed to be ordinary. The rain outside Ethan's window kept sliding down the glass in thin lines steady as breath. His screen glowed with unread emails and a calendar full of meetings that suddenly felt like props. He sat through the next call with his headset on, nodded at the right teams and spoke in short bursts when his name was used. His voice came out even. His hands stayed on the desk, fingers laced, so no one could see the small tremor in them. At noon, his stomach asked for food and his brain refused to answer. He chewed a granola bar from his drawer and tasted nothing but dust and sugar. He drank lukewarm coffee. The bitterness did not cut through the tightness in his chest. He checked the time again, then again. At 1, his phone buzzed with a reminder he had set months ago, the kind that lived like a second heartbeat in his pocket. "Pick up Lucy 3:15. He stared at the words until they stopped looking like letters and started looking like a promise. He locked his phone and slid it face down on the desk. Under the desk, his foot tapped once, twice, then went still. Jordan leaned over the partition, chewing on the cap of a pen. "You good?" Ethan looked up. He made his face do something that could pass for normal. "Just busy." Jordan's eyes narrowed in lazy suspicion. "You got called into a secret meeting. You got promoted. You got murdered." Ethan gave a quiet laugh that did not reach his throat. "None of those." Maya across the aisle glanced over her monitor. "You look like you were about to throw up." Ethan held her gaze for a beat and then looked away. "It is just caffeine." Maya did not buy it, but she let it go the way people do when they sense a door that should stay closed. At 1:30, Ethan stood and took his coat off the back of his chair. The office around him kept moving, the hum of keyboards and voices unchanged. He walked toward the elevators and felt as if he were leaving one world for another without packing the right things. In the lobby, he pushed through the revolving door, and the cold air hit his face. Rain had eased into a fine mist that clung to everything. People moved with shoulders hunched, eyes down, umbrellas angled like defenses. Ethan walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop he rarely entered because it was too expensive for an ordinary Tuesday. It smelled like espresso and baked cinnamon warm enough to make the outside feel like a dream. He ordered a drink with too many words in the name and sat by the window with his hands wrapped around the cup. Across the street, a bus splashed through a puddle and sprayed water onto the curb. A couple under one umbrella argued in low voices, faces turned toward each other, mouths tight. A man in a suit jogged across the crosswalk, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand holding his jacket over his head. Everyone looked like they were trying to arrive somewhere on time. Ethan tried to breathe slowly. He imagined himself at the executive floor again. The thick carpet, the quiet, the clean smell. Vivian Hart's face when she looked at him. Not anger exactly, shock. Then something that shut down. He saw the folder slipping from his arm, the papers skating across the threshold, the torn edge of one page. He felt the heat of embarrassment that had no place to go. He touched the strap of his work bag and found the paper crane inside the faint shape through the fabric. His fingers pressed it once gentle, as if he could draw steadiness out of it. At 1:45, he left the coffee shop. Bundy left the coffee shop and walked back to North Peak. The revolving doors swallowed him. The lobby lights were too bright. He swiped his badge at security and listened to the beep with a kind of dread he had never attached to a small sound before. He rode the elevator up alone this time, watching the floor numbers rise and trying not to swallow too often. 14. The doors opened, the air changed. It always did up here. Less noise, more space. The sense that everything had been sanded down until it could not snag. Naomi Reyes looked up as Ethan approached. Her expression gave away nothing. Her eyes moved to his face, paused, then returned to her screen.
Mr. Cole, she said.
Ms. Reyes. She tapped a key and nodded toward the chairs along the wall. Please have a seat. Ms. Hart will see you at 2. Ethan sat. The chair was leather and expensive and built for posture, not comfort. He set his work bag on the floor and kept both hands on his knees. His knee bounced once and he forced it still. Naomi typed with quiet speed. The sound was the only thing breaking the hush. Behind her monitor sat a framed photograph partly hidden. Ethan caught a glimpse when she leaned slightly to one side. Vivian Hart stood in that photo too, but not like the woman he had seen through the wrong door. In the picture, she held a pair of oversized ceremonial scissors. A ribbon stretched in front of her. A banner behind her showed a children's clinic logo and a smiling cartoon whale. Vivian's mouth was curved into a small smile that looked real enough to surprise him. People around her clapped. Someone beside her, a nurse, maybe looked proud. Ethan looked away quickly, as if he had been caught reading something private. Naomi's phone lit up. She glanced at it, then stood. Her movements were precise, quiet. Ms. Hart is ready. Ethan rose. His legs worked through, they felt distant, as if he were controlling them by instruction rather than ownership. Naomi walked to a door and knocked once. She opened it, stepped aside, and gestured Ethan forward. Inside Suite A was even more spare than Ethan remembered from the hallway. The floor was dark wood. The windows took up most of the far wall, and the view made his stomach drop. The sound lay below a flat sweep of gray under a low sky. Rain streaked the glass. The city looked like it had been drawn in pencil. Vivian Hart stood by the window. She was fully composed now. A charcoal suit fit her with sharp exactness. Her hair was pulled back in a smooth twist. Her face was blank in the way a locked door is blank. It revealed nothing, but it dared you to try. When she turned, her eyes found Ethan and held him. "Mr. Cole," she said. "Ms. Hart." Her voice was calm, neither warm nor hostile, as if emotion would be an inefficiency here. She gestured toward a chair across from her desk. "Sit." Ethan crossed the room. His shoes made a soft sound on the wood, louder than they should have. He sat and placed his hands on his thighs. Again, fingers spread, palms down, holding himself in place. Vivian did not sit. She moved behind the desk and stood with one hand resting lightly on the chair back, like she might sit if she chose to, but she chose not to. The desk was black and clean with almost nothing on it. A closed laptop, a silver pen, a folder that looked thicker than any quarterly report. Silence stretched. Ethan's mind filled it with apology. He tried to shape the words to make them sound professional, controlled, small enough to fit in this room. His mouth opened. Vivian lifted a hand. The gesture was slight. It stopped him completely. "You delivered the quarterly package this morning," she said. "Yes." "You were instructed to leave it in Conference B." "Yes." "You did not initially leave it in Conference B." Ethan felt his face heat. "I opened the wrong door. I am sorry." Vivian's eyes did not narrow. They did not soften. They simply stayed on him, steady and cool. "I am not interested in an apology," she said. "I am interested in what you do next." Ethan swallowed. What do you want me to do? Vivienne reached for the thick folder on her desk and opened it. Paper slid against paper with a quiet rasp. She pulled out a single document and placed it on the desk, then pushed it across to him with 2 fingers. Ethan looked down. Process improvement proposal. His title, his name, his dry, careful paragraphs. The diagrams he had made late at night while Lucy slept in the next room. His throat tightened. I read this, Vivienne said. Ethan did not touch the paper yet. It felt unreal, like seeing your own handwriting in someone else's house. Brent Klein dismissed it. Vivienne continued. He wrote a note on the cover sheet. Too ambitious. Too much scope for an analyst. Risky. Ethan's jaw flexed before he could stop it. That sounds like him. Vivienne's gaze stayed level. It sounds like a man who confuses caution with competence. Ethan's eyes flicked up. That was the first time he had heard a senior executive speak about Brent as if Brent mattered only as an obstacle. Vivienne tapped the proposal once with her fingernail. This is not reckless, she said. It is structured. It is measurable. It is focused on failure points that cost us money and reputation. Ethan's fingers finally reached for the paper. He lifted it as if he were afraid it would dissolve. His own words stared back at him suddenly heavier. Vivienne leaned forward slightly. I am launching a pilot, she said. 6 months, small team, clear success metrics. Your proposal is the foundation. Ethan's mind lagged behind her words. He blinked once. My proposal. Yes. And you want... He began, then stopped, because he did not trust himself to finish the sentence without sounding foolish. I want you to lead it, Vivienne said. The room seemed to tilt again, but in the opposite direction. Ethan tightened his grip on the paper to keep his hands from shaking. I am an analyst, he said. Vivienne's face did not change. You are a problem solver who has been underused. Ethan let out a breath, short and disbelieving. Why me? Vivienne's eyes held his, and for a moment Ethan thought he saw something like calculation and something like honesty in the same place. Because I have read too many reports written by people who know how to maintain the status quo, she said. Your document is written by someone who has stared at a broken process long enough to understand it. You did not complain. You mapped it. You proposed fixes. You did the work without being asked. Ethan's chest tightened, but not from fear this time. The words landed in a place in him that had been empty for a while. Vivienne moved to a different page in the folder and slid another sheet toward him. It was a simple outline. Pilot timeline, team roles, budget range, reporting cadence. You will report directly to me, she said. We will meet twice a week. You will present progress with data, not optimism. Ethan stared at the sheet. His brain started doing the math again. Time, meetings, Lucy's pickup, childcare, sleep. He forced himself to look up. If I do this, I need to be able to keep my schedule for my daughter. Vivienne's expression shifted by a fraction, the smallest tilt of attention. How old is she? 7, Ethan said. Lucy. Vivienne nodded once, like she filed the name somewhere that mattered. Then we schedule meetings within working hours, she said. If a conflict arises, you tell Naomi. We adjust. It was so direct it stole Ethan's ability to respond for a beat. Vivienne's voice stayed calm. Do you want the role? Ethan felt the answer rise up without hesitation. It came from somewhere deeper than fear. Yes, he said. I do. Good, Vivienne replied. Then you will be professional. You will be discreet. You will keep your focus on the work. Ethan's ears rang slightly. Professional, discreet. As if she could seal the morning behind a lock simply by naming the rules. He nodded, understood. Vivienne picked up a pen and wrote something on the sheet, her handwriting sharp and clean. Then she placed the pen down and moved around the desk. For the first time, she came closer. She extended her hand. Ethan stood quickly, almost too quickly, and reached for it. Her grip was firm and brief. Her palm was cool. The contact lasted a second, and still it felt like a jolt through his arm, not from romance, not from anything soft, but from the strange fact that this woman who could reshape a company with a sentence had just shaken his hand like he mattered. Naomi will send you details by end of day, Vivienne said. Your first meeting is Thursday at 9. I will be there, Ethan said. Vivienne's eyes held his for one more beat. Then she glanced toward the windows as if checking the rain for permission to be human for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. The door was unlocked, she said. It should not have been. Ethan's breath caught. Vivienne kept her expression composed, but there was something in her eyes, a quick flash that did not belong to the CEO persona. That was not entirely your mistake, she added. Ethan did not know what to do with that. It felt like a small mercy and also like a confession. He nodded once because words would fail him. Vivienne stepped back. The distance returned between them like a wall rising into place. "You can go," she said. Ethan gathered his bag with hands that wanted to shake again. He held the proposal sheet carefully, then slid it into his folder as if it were fragile. He walked to the door. His fingers touched the handle. He paused, then looked back. Vivienne was already behind her desk again, eyes on her laptop, face smooth as if the last 10 minutes had been nothing more than a calendar block. Ethan opened the door and stepped out. Naomi looked up as he passed. Her eyes flicked to his face and then to his hands. The corners of her mouth did not move, but her voice softened by a degree. "Elevator is to your left, so..." "Your left," she said. "Thank you," Ethan replied. When the elevator doors closed, Ethan let his shoulders drop. He exhaled slowly, his lungs shaking at the end. He pulled out his phone with clumsy fingers. "Pick up Lucy 3:15. The reminder sat there like a light in the fog. Ethan checked the time. 2:19. He stared at the numbers until they settled into something he could believe. Then he slid the phone back into his pocket and rested his head against the cool metal wall of the elevator for one silent second, letting the hum of descent carry him down. The elevator let Ethan out on 8 with the same soft chime it always used, like it could smooth over whatever happened in the floors above. He walked back to his desk on legs that felt newly aware of their own weight. The office noise pressed in around him, keys clicking, a phone ringing somewhere, a laugh that rose and fell like nothing in the world had shifted. He did not tell anyone where he had been or why his throat felt tight. At 2:42, he left the building, moving fast enough that the lobby security guard glanced up, then looked away. The rain had thinned into mist. His car was damp inside the steering wheel, cool beneath his palms. He drove with his jaw clenched, watching the clock on the dashboard change minute by minute, as if time were something he could hold back with force. Riverside Elementary appeared through the gray brick and bright posters, children spilling out in small waves. Ethan parked and waited at the curb, eyes scanning the sidewalk. At 3:15, Lucy emerged in a cluster of kids, her rocket backpack bouncing, her ponytail coming loose at the edges. When she spotted him, her whole face changed. Dad. Not Daddy this time. Just Dad, like she was older for 1 second, like she was checking if he was real. Ethan opened the door, and she climbed in wet sleeves, brushing his coat. "You're on time," she said, casual, as if it was nothing. "I am," Ethan answered. His voice came out rougher than he wanted. He cleared his throat. "How was school?" Lucy dug into her backpack and pulled out a folded shape, careful hands opening it in stages. A paper crane, this one bright yellow wings wide. "Ms. Whitaker says mine is getting better," she said. Ethan nodded. He watched her fingers smooth the creases. Her hands were small and sure. "It is getting better." Lucy held it up to the window. The gray light made the yellow look like a spark. "I made it for you, for your meetings." Ethan's mouth tightened. He did not trust himself to speak for a beat. He took the crane and set it in the cup holder like it belonged there. Lucy buckled herself in and leaned her head against the seat, looking at him in the rearview mirror. "Did you open any wrong doors today?" Ethan froze, then forced a quiet breath out. "No," he said, "I did not." Lucy accepted that with a slow nod, as if she could read the truth in the space between words. Then she looked away and started talking about a class pet and a boy who ate paste and a sticker she earned for lining up quietly. Her voice filled the car and made it normal again. At home, Ethan cooked pasta and warmed jar sauce, adding garlic because Lucy liked to pretend it was a secret ingredient. Lucy ate fast, then wandered off to her room with her crayons and her cranes. Ethan washed dishes, water running hot over his hands, and tried not to feel the day sitting on his shoulders like a wet coat. When Lucy was in bed, her nightlight glowing faintly, he returned to the kitchen table and opened his laptop. The yellow crane sat beside the keyboard. The blue one was still in his bag. 2 small witnesses. He pulled up his proposal and began to rewrite it with new eyes. It was the same document, but it no longer belonged only to him. He added details. He tightened language. He turned soft ideas into measurable steps. He built a timeline that respected work hours, then checked it against Lucy's school schedule, then checked it again. He set alarms on his phone for meetings and for pickup time, even though he did not need them. He wanted the sound there a backstop against distraction. Near midnight, he closed his laptop, rubbed his eyes, and stood in the quiet kitchen. The apartment felt smaller at night. Every creak of the building sounded like someone walking closer. He took one last look at the cranes, then turned off the light and went to bed. Thursday morning, he arrived at North Peak early tie, straight shoes dry. He rode the elevator to 14 with his stomach tight and his notes stacked neatly in a leather folder he had bought years ago and rarely used. It felt like a costume he had not earned. Naomi Reyes looked up as he approached her desk. "Mr. Cole," she said and glanced at the clock. 8:52. Her expression remained neutral, but the timing landed like approval. "Go in." Ethan reached for the door to Suite A. From inside, a voice cut through, sharp and controlled. "No, mother, I am not attending that." Ethan's hand paused on the handle. He heard the faint buzz of a phone speaker, then a reply too quiet to parse. Vivian spoke again, each word clipped. "I am in a meeting. The world does not stop because you want a photo for a committee newsletter." A pause. Ethan stood very still, eyes on the wood grain. "I have heard you," Vivian said. "You have been very clear. Goodbye." The call ended. Silence settled thick as the carpet. Ethan swallowed and knocked once lightly. "Come in," Vivian said. He entered. Vivian stood near the windows with her phone in her hand, already composed. She wore the same charcoal suit, clean lines, no softness. If the call had irritated her, her face did not admit it. Only her fingers still wrapped around the phone. A beat too tightly hinted at tension. She set it down and looked at Ethan. "Sit." Ethan took the chair near the small conference table by the windows, not the one across her main desk. Vivian chose the seat opposite him, close enough that he could see the faint reflection of rain moving across her eyes when she turned her head. "Walk me through your approach," she said. Ethan opened his folder and began. He spoke in clear steps anchored to numbers. He explained the bottlenecks he had mapped. He described the handoffs that broke accountability. He outlined how a single owner per client would reduce friction. He suggested automated verification to catch errors before they became rework. Vivian listened without interrupting. Her attention felt like a spotlight. When Ethan paused to find a figure, she waited, eyes steady, letting the silence apply pressure until he found the right line in his notes. "You are assuming resistance will be minimal," Vivian said. "I am assuming resistance will be loud," Ethan replied, then corrected himself. "I am assuming resistance will be normal. I plan to manage it with training and clear ownership." Vivian's mouth moved in the smallest possible way. Not a smile, something like a recognition of backbone. "Training costs time," she said. "Time costs money." Ethan nodded. "Yes. And yet you did not include a buffer for training in week 3, she said. Ethan looked down, then back up. "I can move the automation testing to week 4 and use that slot for training." "You can," Vivian agreed. "Or you can keep week 3 and shorten week 1. Ethan blinked. "Week 1 is diagnostics." "You already did diagnostics," Vivian said. "You wrote a proposal. Do not repeat work for comfort." The words stung not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Ethan adjusted his timeline and felt a strange relief as the plan tightened. At the end of the hour, Vivian slid a sheet across the table. Budget allocation. Ethan's eyes tracked the numbers, and his pulse jumped. The amount was larger than anything he had ever been trusted with. For a moment, he wondered if he was reading the decimals wrong. He looked up. "This is a lot." "It is the cost of doing something properly," Vivian said. "Use it wisely. I do not tolerate waste." "I will not waste it," Ethan said. Vivian studied his face as if weighing the statement, then nodded once. She stood, and Ethan stood with her, his chair legs scraping softly against the floor. "Next meeting is Monday," she said. "Same time. Bring preliminary data on potential pilot clients." "I will," Ethan answered. Vivian extended her hand. Ethan took it. The grip was firm, brief, efficient. Her eyes stayed on his, a directness that made it hard to breathe normally. He left the office and walked past Naomi's desk without looking at the framed photo. He did not want to see Vivian smiling again. It would make too many things real. Back on 8, Jordan whistled when Ethan returned. "You went up there again." "It is project work," Ethan said. Maya leaned on the edge of her cubicle wall. "Project work with her." Ethan opened his laptop. "Yes." Maya's eyes sharpened. "That is not small." "No," Ethan admitted, and kept his voice low. "It is not." He spent the rest of the day assembling a team list. He did not choose the loudest people. He chose the quiet ones who did good work and got overlooked. Maya for analysis and reporting because she saw patterns fast and did not panic. Jordan for implementation support because he could translate between technical teams and humans. A client success lead named Tessa Monroe who was blunt in a way clients trusted. He filed the internal request and watched the system spin. Monday came with heavier rain. Ethan arrived on 14 at 8:55, and Naomi let him in without comment. This time, Vivian was already seated at the conference table, a tablet in front of her stylus poised. Ethan spoke through the pilot client criteria. Vivian asked questions like cuts, which industries first, what churn risk profile, what timeline pressure. Ethan answered and learned where his logic was thin. When he hesitated, she did not rescue him. She waited, forcing him to do the work out loud. Halfway through her phone lit up again. Ethan saw the name on the screen. Mother. Vivian stared at it for a beat, then silenced it without looking away from Ethan. Continue, she said. Ethan did, but his focus kept snagging on that small interruption, the proof that someone could reach Vivian's heart and make her jaw tighten. When the meeting ended, Vivian closed her tablet and glanced at the clock. Have you eaten? Ethan hesitated. Not yet. There is a place near Pike Place that has decent soup, Vivian said. Her tone stayed flat like this was an extension of work. We can review client communications there. Ethan told himself it was efficient. He told himself it was normal. Outside, the air smelled of wet pavement and roasted coffee. Vivian walked beside him, without an umbrella coat collar up, rain dotting her hair like tiny glass beads. Ethan held his own umbrella and felt ridiculous under it. At the restaurant, the tables had cloth napkins. Nobody posted prices on the menu. Ethan ordered what she ordered because he did not want to ask the wrong question. The soup arrived steaming, the bread warm, and for the first 10 minutes they spoke only about the pilot and the language clients needed to hear. Then Vivian set her spoon down and looked at him, not at his notes, at him. How long have you been raising Lucy alone? She asked. Ethan's hand tightened on his water glass. He could have kept it vague. 2 years. End of story. He heard himself answer with more. 2.5, he said. Her mother left. It was not dramatic. It was quiet. She packed. She said she could not do it anymore. Then she was gone. Vivian's eyes held his with a stillness that did not feel like judgment. It felt like attention. And she does not call, Vivian said. It was not a question. It was an observation drawn from the way Ethan's voice had flattened on the last sentence. Ethan swallowed. No. Vivian nodded once slow. That is a particular kind of weight, she said. Ethan's chest tightened again, but this time it was not fear. He stared at the breadbasket for a beat, then forced himself to look back up. I manage, he said. I can see that, Vivian replied. The words landed quietly, not praise, not pity, a fact. They finished lunch and walked back through mist that clung to their coats. Vivian's pace was steady, purposeful. Ethan matched it. At the building entrance, she paused for half a second, eyes on the revolving doors, then stepped through without hesitation. Ethan followed, umbrella dripping onto the mat, and listened to the security gates beep as they passed. The security gates blinked green as Ethan and Vivian passed through the lobby. The familiar beep sounded different now, as if the building had started keeping score. Vivian did not slow. She moved with the same contained pace she had at the restaurant coat, still dotted with rain shoulders, squared eyes forward. Ethan walked beside her for a few steps, then angled toward the elevators that would take him back to 8. Thursday, she said without looking at him. Thursday, he confirmed. She nodded once and turned toward the private bank of elevators reserved for the top floors. The doors accepted her like they knew her. They slid shut without haste, leaving Ethan standing in the public elevator line with his umbrella dripping onto the mat. On 8, the office smelled like overheated electronics and someone's microwave noodles. Maya waved him over with a quick tilt of her chin. Jordan spun in his chair and mouthed, "How bad?" Ethan sat and opened his laptop. "We are moving forward," he said, keeping his voice low. Maya's eyes sharpened. "With budget?" Ethan nodded. Jordan let out a soft whistle. "So, she really picked you." Ethan looked at his screen. A spreadsheet of onboarding timelines stared back at him like it always had. The numbers were the same. He was not. She did, he said. The next days slid into a rhythm that felt both punishing and clean. Ethan arrived early. He left late, but not late enough to miss Lucy. Meetings with Vivian happened twice a week at 9, exactly as promised. Naomi blocked the calendar like it was a law. The same table by the windows, the same view of rain and water, the same focused silence while Ethan spoke, and Vivian listened with a precision that made his thoughts feel visible. Vivian did not praise. She corrected. She did not comfort. She clarified. When Ethan brought Maya and Jordan into the loop, Vivian asked them questions that made them sit up straighter. She remembered every figure. She spotted inconsistencies before the spreadsheet finished loading. It was exhausting and strangely reassuring, like standing near a powerful machine that would not break down as long as you respected it. Once during a review of client handoff points, Vivian paused with her stylus hovering. Why is this step still manual? Jordan shifted in his seat. Legacy system. It does not talk to the new tool. Vivian's eyes did not flicker. Make it talk. Jordan blinked, then gave a reluctant smile. Yes, ma'am. After meetings, Ethan returned to 8 and translated Vivian's demands into work that could be done by humans. He negotiated with IT. He chased approvals. He coached Maya through stakeholder meetings where people nodded politely and then tried to protect their turf. He wrote emails that sounded calm even when his stomach was tight. He began setting alarms for everything, even though he never forgot Lucy's pickup. The alarms were not for time. They were for the part of him that believed good fathers did not miss things. Lucy noticed the change anyway. One evening she sat at the kitchen table folding cranes while Ethan typed beat her. The apartment was quiet except for rain on the window and the soft rasp of paper creasing. Lucy glanced at him without lifting her head. "Are you doing survival day work?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "Is your boss scary?" Lucy asked. Ethan hesitated. "She is intense." Lucy nodded, like that explained everything. Maybe she needs a crane. Ethan watched Lucy's hands fold a wing. Maybe he said. Lucy slid a finished crane toward him. This one was white with silver dots. "For the door," she said. Ethan's fingers froze for a moment. "What door?" Lucy shrugged. "The big doors, so they open nice." Ethan put the crane in his pocket and felt his throat tighten with something he could not name. By the second week, Vivian's phone calls from her mother became a familiar interruption. The screen would light. Vivian would silence it without looking. Sometimes it would buzz again. Sometimes she would excuse herself for 2 minutes and return with her jaw set, face smoothed back into place like nothing had happened. Ethan stopped pretending he did not notice. He also stopped asking. He learned the shape of her control and where it strained. On a Thursday in late October, the strain snapped in a different direction. They were in Suite A at the small table reviewing budget allocation for Phase 1. Maya and Jordan had returned to 8. It was only Ethan and Vivian. Rain streaked the windows thick and fast. The sound was almost soothing until it was not. Ethan had a folder open, pages marked with tabs. He was explaining the cost of automation testing when his phone buzzed on the table. Riverside Elementary. His pulse hit hard enough to make his vision narrow. He reached for the phone and silenced it immediately, eyes still on his notes, as if he could pretend it had not happened. 30 seconds later it buzzed again. Same number. Ethan's fingers hovered. His skin prickled. He glanced at the clock on the wall behind Vivian's shoulder. 3:24. His mouth went dry. He did the calculation like a knife sliding in. Dismissal at 3:15. Lucy would have walked to the pickup line. She would have looked for his car. She would have waited. She would have asked the teacher. She would have been led to the office with her backpack on her lap and her face trying to be brave. Vivienne watched him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp. "Answer it," she said. Ethan's throat worked. "It is probably nothing." Vivienne's voice did not rise. "Answer it." Ethan picked up the phone with fingers that suddenly felt too big. "Hello, this is Ethan Cole." A woman's voice, professional and tired. "Mr. Cole. This is Ms. Daniels at Riverside Elementary. Lucy is here in the front office. She says no one came to pick her up." Ethan's lungs stalled. Ms. Daniels continued polite but firm. "We tried your emergency contact, Mrs. Alvarez, but we are not reaching her." Mrs. Alvarez, Ethan's neighbor, the woman who had offered weeks ago to be back up on days when meetings ran long. Ethan had not checked with her this morning. He had assumed. He had let himself believe his system was stronger than it was. "I am coming," Ethan said. The words tumbled out. "I am coming right now. I am so sorry. I am on my way." "How far are you?" Ms. Daniels asked. Ethan looked at the clock again. 3:25. He heard the rain. He heard his own heartbeat. 15 minutes, he said, and knew it was a lie. Downtown traffic would not allow 15 minutes unless the streets opened for him. "Please come as quickly as you safely can," Ms. Daniels said. "She is upset." Ethan's eyes burned. "Yes," he managed. "Yes, thank you." He ended the call and stood so fast his chair scraped the wood. "I forgot," he said, voice tight. He did not know if he was speaking to Vivienne or to the air. "I forgot her." Vivienne stood too. Her movements were quick, controlled. "Your car is in the garage," she said. "Yes." She walked around the table and reached for her coat. "Mine is closer. I will drive." Ethan blinked. "You do not have to." Vivienne's gaze locked on his. "You are wasting time," she said. "Come on." Naomi barely looked up as they passed her desk. She opened a door without being asked. The private elevator accepted Vivienne immediately. The descent felt too slow. Ethan stared at the numbers above the doors as if he could force them to change faster. In the executive garage, the air was colder and cleaner. Vivienne's car sat near the elevator, black paint gleaming under fluorescent light. She unlocked it with a click that echoed. Ethan got in on the passenger side. The leather seat felt too expensive, too unfamiliar. Vivienne slid behind the wheel like she belonged there and started the engine. The car moved the moment the garage gate lifted. Seattle traffic was a living thing. Vivienne threaded through it with steady aggression, not reckless, just decisive. The windshield wipers swept back and forth in firm arcs. Ethan pressed his hands against his thighs, trying to make them stop shaking. "I never do this," he said. "It came out raw. I never forget." Vivienne kept her eyes on the road. "You are running a project with board visibility," she said. "You are also raising a child. Your brain is not a machine." "It should be," Ethan snapped, then immediately hated himself for the edge in his voice. He swallowed. "It has to be." Vivienne glanced at him for a fraction of a second, then back to the traffic. "No," she said. "It has to be accountable. Machines break. Humans repair." Ethan stared at the dashboard, at the clean lines and the calm glow of the speedometer. He thought of Lucy's face when she said, "You are there." The certainty, the trust. He imagined it cracking. They reached the school in 20 minutes that felt like 2. Vivienne pulled into the lot and stopped. Ethan was out before the car fully settled. Rain hit his face cold and sharp. He ran across the sidewalk and shoved through the front doors. The office smelled like crayons and disinfectant. A receptionist looked up, startled by his wet hair and the panic on his face. "Ethan Cole," he said. "Lucy." Ms. Daniels appeared from behind a counter. "She is right here," she said, and guided him toward a small waiting area. Lucy sat in a plastic chair with her backpack in her lap. Her cheeks were blotchy. Her ponytail had slipped loose. She held a crumpled tissue in one fist. When she looked up, her eyes were red and bright. For a beat, she did not move. Then her face broke, and she stood, the backpack sliding off her shoulder. "Dad," she said, and the word carried hurt like weight. Ethan dropped to his knees in front of her and wrapped his arms around her, careful not to crush her, desperate to hold her anyway. Her small body was warm through her jacket. "I am so sorry," he said into her hair. "I am so sorry. I made a mistake." Lucy's voice came muffled against his shoulder. "You forgot me." Ethan closed his eyes. "Yes," he said. I did, and I should not have. I am here now." Lucy pulled back just enough to look at him. Tears clung to her lashes. "Were you opening wrong doors?" she asked, and the question was sharp in its innocence. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "No," he said. "I was working. I lost track. It will not happen again." Lucy's mouth trembled. She did not nod. She did not say it was okay. She just stood there with her backpack and the bruise of waiting in her eyes. Behind Ethan, footsteps approached with measured calm. He turned. Vivienne Hart stood just inside the office coat, dark with rain hair, still smooth face composed. In the fluorescent light, she looked even more unreal, like someone who belonged on a screen, not in a school office, with finger paint posters on the wall. Lucy stared at her. "Who is that?" Lucy whispered, and there was no fear in it, only blunt curiosity. Ethan swallowed. "That is Ms. Hart," he said. "She is my boss. She drove me here." Vivienne stepped closer, then stopped a respectful distance away. She crouched, lowering herself to Lucy's level. The movement looked practiced, like she had learned it from watching other people do it, and decided it mattered. "Hello, Lucy," Vivienne said. Her voice was softer than it had been in the conference room. "I am Vivienne." Lucy blinked hard once, as if resetting. "You drove in the rain," she said. "I did," Vivienne replied. Lucy studied her face. "Do you like cranes?" she asked. Vivienne's eyes flicked just briefly to Ethan, then back to Lucy. "I have not had the pleasure," she said, "but I have heard they are important." Lucy's chin lifted a fraction. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a paper crane crushed at the wings. She held it out like an offering. "It got squished," Lucy said. Vivienne took it with 2 fingers, careful, as if it were fragile and valuable at the same time. She turned it slightly, examining the folds with real attention. "It still flies," Vivienne said. Lucy stared at her. The corners of her mouth softened. Not a smile yet. A loosening. Ms. Daniels cleared her throat gently. "We are glad you are here," she said to Ethan. Her eyes flicked to Vivienne, a quick recognition of someone important, and her posture shifted. Vivienne stood. "Thank you for keeping her safe," she said to Ms. Daniels, and the words were simple, but they landed with the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Ethan lifted Lucy's backpack strap and slid it onto his own shoulder. "Let's go," he told Lucy softly. Lucy took his hand. Her fingers were cold from waiting. She squeezed once hard, like she needed to confirm he was real. Outside, the rain had eased into a fine mist again. Vivienne walked with them to the car. Lucy climbed into the back seat and buckled herself in with quick efficiency, eyes still on Vivienne through the gap between the front seats. "Do you have a badge too?" Lucy asked. Vivienne paused. "At work," she said. Lucy nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "My badge says I am an important person." Vivienne's mouth moved slightly, a hint of amusement. "I believe that is accurate. Ethan stared straight ahead as Vivian started the car. He felt shame in his chest like a hot stone. He also felt something else quieter. Relief that Lucy was not alone anymore. Relief that someone had stepped in when he could not be in two places at once. They drove through the wet streets toward Ethan's neighborhood. The city softened as they left downtown buildings giving way to smaller storefronts and trees dripping rain onto sidewalks. Lucy leaned forward between the seats, eyes wide with the energy that always returned once she decided a crisis had passed. Vivian, she tried tasting the name. That is a fancy name. Vivian glanced at the rearview mirror. It is my name, she said. Lucy considered. Do people call you Vivi? Vivian hesitated for a beat that Ethan felt more than saw. Some do not, she said. Lucy nodded as if she filed that away. Okay, I can call you Vivian. Ethan's stomach tightened at the idea of Lucy naming Vivian with that casual intimacy. He looked out at the rain on the windshield, at the wipers sweeping like steady hands. Vivian pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment building a few minutes later. The place looked smaller from inside her car. The paint on the entry door was chipped. The stairs were dark with damp. A mailbox hung slightly crooked on the wall. Lucy unbuckled and leaned forward again, eyes bright now. Do you want to come inside? She asked Vivian. We have juice boxes. Ethan's breath caught. He turned, saw Lucy's earnest face in the rearview mirror, then looked at Vivian. Her expression was unreadable, but her gaze had settled on the building with something like curiosity, something like caution. Ethan's hand found the door handle on instinct, then stopped. His fingers rested there, cold metal under his palm, while the three of them sat in the quiet of the parked car and listened to the mist tap softly against the windows. Ethan's fingers stayed on the door handle of the car, frozen between yes and no. Lucy waited in the back seat, chin lifted, certain that invitations were meant to be accepted. Vivian sat in the driver's seat with both hands lightly on the wheel, eyes on the apartment building, as if she were reading a report. It is not much, Ethan said, and hated how defensive it sounded. Lucy leaned forward between the seats. It is our house, she corrected, like the word itself could straighten the chipped paint and crooked mailbox. Vivian glanced at Lucy in the rearview mirror. I have been in many places, she said. I have not been in yours. Ethan swallowed. If you have time, he offered. Vivian's gaze shifted to him. It was steady, direct, and for once not sharpened by boardroom distance. I have time, she said. Lucy made a quiet victory noise and unlatched her seatbelt again just to latch it, as if preparing for a mission. Ethan got out first. Mist clung to his coat. He walked around to Lucy's door, helped her with her backpack, then stood there while Vivian turned off the engine. The car door opened and she stepped out into the damp air without flinching. No umbrella, no hesitation. She closed the door with a soft, controlled click and followed them to the entrance. The building lobby smelled like wet carpet and old mail. The hallway light buzzed faintly overhead. Ethan fished his keys from his pocket with hands that still felt slightly unreliable. Lucy pointed at the keyring. Beep, she whispered. Not everything needs a sound effect, Ethan murmured. It does, Lucy said. Vivian watched the exchange with a look that was almost curious. Her eyes moved from Ethan's keys to the narrow stairwell, then to the smudged window beside the mailboxes. Her coat was dark-tailored, the kind of garment that belonged in a different zip code. Rain beaded on the fabric and sat there bright as tiny stones. Ethan led them upstairs. The stairwell was tight. The railing was sticky with old paint. Lucy skipped one step at a time. Vivian climbed without looking down, posture unchanged as if she had decided gravity was not worth acknowledging. At Ethan's door, Lucy held out her plastic badge on its lanyard and pressed it to the peephole. Beep, she said again. Access granted. Ethan unlocked the door. The apartment greeted them with warm air and the faint smell of garlic from last night's dinner. The living room was small, the couch second-hand, the coffee table scarred with marker lines Lucy insisted were maps. A bowl of paper cranes sat in the center of the table like a strange floral arrangement. The yellow one from today was perched on the rim wings, tilted. Lucy kicked off her sneakers and dropped her backpack with a thud. Welcome, she announced, sweeping an arm like a tour guide. This is the couch. That is the kitchen. Do not step on the blanket because it is lava sometimes. Vivian paused just inside the door, eyes taking in the room. She did not smile. She did not look uncomfortable either. She simply stood absorbing details the way she absorbed numbers. Ethan hung his coat and turned back. Would you like, he began, then stopped. He did not know what he could offer her that would not feel small. Lucy answered for him. Juice box, she said, already heading to the kitchen. We have apple and we have grape, but grape tastes like purple. Vivian's gaze followed Lucy. I have never tasted purple, she said. Lucy popped her head around the corner. Then you need grape. Ethan watched Vivian's expression shift almost imperceptible, as if a muscle in her face had forgotten how to relax and was trying to remember. She stepped farther in and set her coat over the back of the couch, careful not to touch the bowl of cranes. Lucy returned with a juice box and a straw. She held it out with both hands like a formal offering. Vivian took it the same way she took the crumpled crane at the school, with a gentleness that seemed practiced in private. "Thank you," Vivian said. "You are welcome," Lucy replied, satisfied. Ethan moved to the kitchen and opened the cabinet out of habit. Coffee cups, plates, a stack of mismatched bowls. He filled the kettle and set it on the stove more for something to do than because anyone needed coffee at 4:30. In the living room, Lucy climbed onto the couch beside Vivian, close enough to touch, but not touching yet. Lucy's eyes flicked to Vivian's hands. "Do you have rings?" Lucy asked. Vivian glanced down at her fingers. "No." Lucy nodded like she had expected that. "My teacher has rings. She says they are loud when she is mad because they hit the desk." Vivian looked at the coffee table, then back to Lucy. "My desk is quiet," she said. Lucy considered that. "So, when you are mad, how do people know?" Vivian's mouth tightened slightly. "They usually know." Ethan's hands stilled on the kettle handle. He could hear them every word in the small apartment. Lucy reached into the bowl and lifted a crane by its wings. "This one is sick," she declared. "It looks fine," Ethan called from the kitchen. "It has a crooked wing," Lucy insisted, turning to Vivian. "Can you fix it?" Vivian took the crane. She held it between her fingers and studied it with focused attention. Not the amused attention adults gave children, real attention. Her thumbs pressed the crease once. She adjusted the wing by a fraction. The crane's shape changed subtly, becoming more balanced. Lucy's eyes widened. "You did it." Vivian handed it back. "It was already a crane," she said. "It only needed a better fold." Lucy looked at her as if she were deciding something important. "You are good at fixing," Lucy said. Vivian's gaze stayed on Lucy for a beat. "That is my job," she replied. Lucy nodded, pleased. "My dad fixes too. He fixes the sink and he fixes my math." Ethan set 2 mugs on the counter and realized his throat felt tight again. He turned on the kettle and listened to the click, grateful for any sound. When he returned to the living room, Vivian was sipping grape juice, through the straw posture, still controlled, but her shoulders had lowered by a degree. Lucy was showing her a worksheet with stars drawn in the margins. "This is our solar system," Lucy said. "This is Earth. This is the moon. This is where the cranes live." Vivian's eyebrows lifted. "Cranes live on the moon." "Sometimes," Lucy said, "when the doors are locked on Earth." Vivian glanced toward Ethan. The look was brief and unreadable, but it made heat rise under Ethan's collar. He cleared his throat. "Dinner is usually simple," he said, as if he needed to justify the apartment again. Lucy waved a hand dismissively. "Dad makes good spaghetti." Vivian set the juice box down. "I believe her," she said, and the corner of her mouth moved in something close to amusement. They stayed longer than Ethan expected. Lucy talked. Vivian listened. Ethan made pasta because it was past 5, and Lucy's mood lived on a schedule even when Ethan's life did not. Vivian insisted she should leave. Lucy ignored that completely and brought out more cranes like evidence. At the table, Vivian ate with the same neat precision she had used on the crumpled crane, but she did not act as if the food was beneath her. She asked Lucy about school. Lucy answered with long, dramatic sentences. Ethan watched them like he was watching a scene in a movie he had never auditioned for. After dinner, Lucy yawned so hard it turned into a squeak. Ethan guided her toward the bathroom for teeth and face and pajamas. Vivian stood in the living room, with her coat and her hand keys already between her fingers. At the door, Ethan tried to find the right words. "Thank you," he said. "For driving, for coming." Vivian's eyes met his. "You keep thanking me," she said. "I keep meaning it." Her gaze flicked past him to the small apartment, to the bowl of cranes, to the hallway that led to Lucy's room. When she looked back, her expression had softened, by a thin layer, as if a film had been peeled away. "She is very perceptive," Vivian said. Ethan nodded. "She sees everything." Vivian's fingers tightened once on her keys. "You did not forget her because you do not care," she said. "You forgot because you were overloaded." Ethan's jaw clenched. "That is not an excuse." "No," Vivian agreed. "It is context." She opened the door. Cool air slipped in. She stepped into the hallway, then paused with her hand on the handle. "The office door was unlocked," she said, voice low. That was context too. Ethan's breath caught. He did not answer. He did not know how. Vivienne nodded once like she accepted his silence and walked away. Lucy asked about her the next day as if Vivienne had always existed. Is she coming again? Lucy said, Ethan kept his eyes on the coffee. She is my boss, he said. Lucy rolled her eyes. Bosses can still come, she replied. They did not speak about it again, but Vivienne appeared on Thursday, and then on the next Tuesday each visit framed as work. She came with a folder. She left with a list of action items. Sometimes she stayed long enough to eat dinner. Lucy learned how to place a third plate on the table without making a big show of it. Ethan noticed anyway. On a windy night in early November, rain hit the windows hard enough to sound like thrown gravel. Ethan was boiling pasta while Vivienne sat at the table with her laptop open, reviewing client communications. Lucy was on the floor building a crane airport out of shoeboxes. The lights flickered once. Lucy froze. Is that the ghost? It is the wind, Ethan said. The lights flickered again, then went out. The apartment fell into sudden darkness. The hum of the fridge died. The stove clicked off. Rain filled the silence. Lucy made a small sound and grabbed Ethan's sleeve. Ethan reached for his phone and turned on the flashlight. A narrow beam cut through the room, catching the reflective dots on a crane wing. Vivienne's voice came calm from the table. Where are your candles? Ethan blinked. I do not have candles. Vivienne stood. You should. Lucy's eyes widened. We can make a fort, she declared. Ethan started to protest, then stopped. Lucy was already dragging cushions off the couch. Vivienne did not move away. She crouched and took the edge of a blanket Lucy shoved toward her, holding it up without being asked. The phone light made shadows jump across the ceiling. Rain hammered the glass. Inside the blanket fort, Lucy giggled the sound loud and bright against the storm. This is better than lights, Lucy announced. Vivienne's hair had loosened slightly and the dark one strand slipping along her cheek. Ethan saw her smile, then brief but real, in the glow of the flashlight. It changed her entire face. Later, when Lucy fell asleep under the blanket with a crane clutched in her fist, Ethan carried her to bed. Vivienne stood by the hallway wall, with her coat in her arms, keys in hand, as if she had remembered she was supposed to leave. She is easy to love, Vivienne said, voice low. Ethan met her eyes. He saw something raw there for a second, something that looked like longing and restraint in the same place. She is, Ethan said. Vivienne looked toward Lucy's door, then back. You are doing better than you think, she said. Ethan swallowed, unsure how to accept anything that sounded like approval from her. Vivienne nodded once and left, stepping into the stairwell without looking back. The next week, Mrs. Alvarez called Ethan at noon. Her voice was thin-strained. Ethan, mijo, I am at the clinic. Ethan stood at his desk, heart tightening. What happened? I slipped on the stairs, she said, and he heard the embarrassment under the pain. My wrist. They think it is broken. Ethan closed his eyes. Are you alone? My son is coming, she said. But listen, I cannot pick up Lucy for you anymore. Not for a while. Ethan's stomach dropped. He looked at the spreadsheet on his screen. Numbers blurred. It is okay, he lied. Do not worry about us. Are you okay? I will be fine, Mrs. Alvarez said. But you need a plan. Lucy needs a plan. After the call, Ethan sat down and opened his banking app. He stared at the balance and did the math without writing it down. Rent, food, car insurance, Lucy's needs. There was no space. There was never space. He called 2 after-school programs on his lunch break. One had a wait list. Another cost more per month than Ethan spent on groceries. He called a private sitter service and listened to the hourly rate with his jaw clenched. When he left work that day, rain had returned steady and cold. He picked up Lucy, smiled when she waved her paper crane at him, and drove home with his mind crowded. Vivienne arrived that evening with a folder and a calm expression, as if she had decided the day would not touch her unless she allowed it. She took off her coat, set the folder on the table, and looked at Ethan. You seem distracted, she said. Ethan tried to keep his voice light. Just logistics. Vivienne waited. Silence was her tool. Ethan broke first. My neighbor cannot help with pickup anymore, he admitted. She fell, broke her wrist. Vivienne's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, in focus. So, you need coverage. I am working on it, Ethan said. What have you found? Ethan's laugh came out without humor. Mostly prices that assume I make more than I do. Vivienne's gaze did not move away. How much is the after-school program? Ethan hesitated. $800 a month. Vivienne's eyes flicked quick mental math. And you can afford that. I can, Ethan said, then corrected himself. I can if I cut other things. Vivienne's posture shifted. Very slight. A change in temperature. What things, she asked. Ethan looked at the table. Car insurance. Internet. I can switch plans. It is fine. Vivienne's voice went flat. It is not fine. Ethan's jaw tightened. I have managed worse. Vivienne opened the folder she had brought, but it was not project documentation. It was a slim envelope and a sheet of paper with North Peak letterhead. She slid it across the table toward him without ceremony. I am covering the program, she said. Ethan stared at the paper. His name was printed neatly. The amount was written in clean ink. His chest tightened, with something like anger and embarrassment tangled together. No, he said too fast. I cannot. Vivienne lifted her eyes to his. Yes, she replied just as calm. This is not charity. It is practical. Lucy needs reliable care. You need to focus. I need this project to succeed. Ethan's hands curled on the table edge. I can pay you back. Vivienne did not blink. I do not want you to pay me back. Ethan's throat worked. He looked away then back like he might find a loophole in her expression. Vivienne's voice lowered slightly. I want you to stop calculating safety, like it is optional, she said. Lucy's feet thudded in the hallway then, and she burst into the kitchen holding a new paper crane, bright green wings spread wide. Look, Lucy announced, holding it up. This one is strong. Vivienne's eyes shifted to Lucy, and something in her face softened instantly, as if Lucy had an access code Ethan did not. It is very strong, Vivienne said. Lucy smiled, pleased, then looked between them. Are you guys talking about money again? She asked, tone weary, in the way only children can be, as if adults and their money talk were a boring weather pattern. Ethan forced a smile. Just grown-up stuff. Lucy shrugged and climbed into her chair, already reaching for crayons. Okay, she said, but do not forget, 3:15. Ethan's stomach tightened. I will not, he said. Vivienne's gaze met his over Lucy's head. Her eyes were steady. Her expression was controlled. Her hand rested lightly on the envelope on the table, as if she had placed it there, and it would stay there because she decided it would. Outside the window, rain slid down the glass in thin lines steady as breath. Ethan did not touch the envelope that night, not while Lucy colored at the table humming to herself and making the green crane fly over a galaxy of purple marker dots. Not while Vivienne sat across from them with her hands folded, posture composed, gaze drifting between Lucy's page and Ethan's face, as if she could read the numbers behind his eyes. He waited until Lucy went to brush her teeth. The bathroom door clicked shut. Water ran. A familiar domestic noise that should have softened everything. Ethan slid the envelope back toward Vivienne. I can figure it out, he said. Vivienne's eyes stayed on the envelope, not on his hand. You are already figuring it out, she replied. You are doing the math in your head and cutting essentials until you call it responsibility. Ethan's jaw tightened. It is my responsibility. It is Lucy's safety, Vivienne said. Stop turning safety into a personal virtue test. He let out a breath through his nose, short and controlled. He wanted to argue. He wanted to insist that accepting help was a crack that cracks became breaks, that breaks became consequences. But Lucy's voice drifted from the bathroom, singing nonsense lyrics to a tune Ethan recognized from kindergarten. Vivienne's gaze lifted following the sound. She sings when she is tired, Ethan said quieter. Vivienne nodded once. She sings when she is resilient. Ethan looked down at the envelope again. Paper. Ink. A number that removed one fear while creating another. I do not want anyone thinking he began. Vivienne's eyes snapped back to his. Thinking what? Ethan swallowed. That I am being taken care of. Vivienne's expression did not soften. It sharpened. Anyone who thinks that has not watched you work, she said. And anyone who wants to think that will not be persuaded by your struggle. Lucy ran back into the kitchen in pajamas, hair damp at the ends, toothbrush foam mist at one corner of her mouth. Time, she announced, as if Ethan had called a meeting. She climbed into Vivienne's lap without asking, not heavy enough to be a burden, heavy enough to feel real. Vivienne held very still at first. Her hands hovered, then settled at Lucy's back with careful control. Lucy sighed content and pressed her cheek against Vivienne's shoulder like she belonged there. Ethan watched throat tight. He reached for a dish towel and wiped the counter that did not need wiping. Lucy looked up at Vivienne. Do you have rules, she asked. Vivienne blinked. Many. Lucy nodded, satisfied. Me too. Rule 1, do not forget. Rule 2, cranes are lucky. Rule 3, bad doors are for bad days. Vivienne's gaze flicked to Ethan. And what are good doors for? She asked Lucy. Lucy yawned. For coming home, she said as if it were obvious, and slid off Vivienne's lap to pad toward her room. Ethan stood at the sink with his hands on the counter staring at nothing. Vivienne, rose coat in hand. "We will keep this clean," she said, voice low. "We will keep everything documented. You will not be vulnerable because you accepted childcare." Ethan finally met her eyes. That is not how people talk. Vivianne's mouth moved slightly, almost a smile. Almost. "People are often sloppy," she said. "We will not be." She left a few minutes later, her heels quiet on the stairwell. Ethan locked the door behind her and stood with his palm flat on the wood, feeling the cool grain under his skin. He slept badly. The next morning, he accepted the envelope. He did it without ceremony. He slid it into the same drawer where he kept spare batteries and school permission slips, a place for important things that did not look important. Then he packed Lucy's lunch and drove her to school and listened to her sing a new song about astronauts who refused to eat vegetables. At North Peak, the elevator doors opened on 8, and the normal world rushed in. Maya was already at her desk, hair still damp from rain. Jordan held a paper cup of coffee, like it was a life raft. "You have that look," Maya said as Ethan sat down. "What look?" "The look like you went 12 rounds with a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet won," Jordan replied. Ethan opened his laptop. "We have work." Maya leaned closer, voice lowering. "People are talking." Ethan's fingers paused over the keyboard. "About what?" Maya's eyes slid toward the aisle, then back. "About you going upstairs, a lot. About budget approvals moving fast. About you picking a team and not asking Brent." Jordan snorted. "Brent is mad. Brent is always mad." Ethan kept his voice steady. "It is a pilot. It has executive sponsorship." Maya studied him. "Is she—" Maya hesitated, as if choosing words with tweezers. "Is Ms. Hart difficult?" Ethan thought of Vivian crouching in the school office holding a crushed crane like it mattered. He thought of her voice the night before, blunt and protective. "She is direct," he said. Jordan grinned. "That is the polite version of difficult." Ethan did not smile back. He checked the time. 8:41. He had a 9 o'clock meeting on 14. Naomi had placed it in his calendar with no subject line and a location tag that made his stomach tighten every time he saw it. At 8:55, he stepped out of the elevator onto 14. The carpet swallowed the sound of his shoes. The air smelled faintly of citrus and something metallic. Naomi looked up as he approached, then glanced at her screen. "Mr. Cole," she said. Her voice was neutral as always, but her eyes held him half a second longer than usual. Ethan felt more than saw that she had been fielding something. Calls, questions, eyes. "Morning," Ethan said. Naomi tapped a key. "Ms. Hart is expecting you." Ethan nodded. "Has there been any issue?" Naomi's expression did not change. "No issue," she said. Then quieter, "Be precise today." Ethan's pulse picked up. "Why?" Naomi's gaze flicked toward the hallway, toward a corner, where a doorway led to a larger conference space used for executive reviews. Her voice stayed calm. "Because people listen." Ethan did not ask who. Inside suite. Vivian was already seated at the small table by the windows, tablet open, stylus poised. She did not look up when he entered. "Sit," she said. Ethan sat. He opened his folder and began walking through preliminary metrics, early bottlenecks, the names of the first pilot clients. He spoke clearly. He kept his voice level. He anchored everything in numbers. Vivian listened, then cut in with 2 questions that made him adjust his assumptions in real time. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The air tightened around her words. Halfway through, Naomi appeared at the doorway. "Ms. Hart," she said. Vivian did not turn. "Yes." "Mr. Holloway has arrived," Naomi said. "He would like to attend the remaining portion." Ethan felt his stomach drop into his shoes. Vivian's stylus paused. Her eyes lifted to Ethan for a beat, then returned to Naomi. "Send him in." Naomi stepped back. A moment later, Grant Holloway entered. He was taller than Ethan expected. Shoulders, broad hair, silver at the temples, suit. Dark and expensive in a way that looked easy on him. He smiled as if he liked everyone, and the smile did not touch his eyes. "Vivian," he said warmly. "Morning." Grant, Vivian replied. Grant's gaze moved to Ethan. "And you must be Ethan Cole." Ethan rose automatically. "Yes, sir." Grant shook his hand with deliberate pressure. His grip was firm, measured like a test. "I have heard your pilot is moving quickly," Grant said. "We are making progress," Ethan replied. Grant turned his smile back to Vivian. "I wanted to see the work," he said, "since this initiative touches client experience across divisions." Vivian's expression stayed composed. "Then sit," she said, and gestured to the chair beside Ethan. Grant sat. He folded his hands on the table, posture, relaxed eyes, alert. Ethan resumed. He walked through the workflow redesign. He showed how ownership consolidation reduced confusion. He explained automated verification. He cited early client feedback. He referenced training modules. Grant listened without interrupting, which was almost worse than interruption. His eyes tracked each page like he was memorizing it for later. When Ethan finished, Grant leaned back slightly. "Impressive," Grant said. "You have a talent for narrative, making operations sound like a story." Ethan forced a polite smile. "Thank you." Grant's gaze sharpened. "What was your pilot budget again?" Ethan glanced at Vivian. She did not react. He answered, 340,000. Grant made a small sound, not quite a whistle. "That is robust," he said, voice mild. "Our typical pilots run smaller." Vivian's eyes stayed on Grant. "Our typical pilots achieve typical results." Grant smiled. "And your results so far justify the investment." "They do," Vivian said. Grant turned to Ethan. "How often are you meeting with Vivian?" Ethan felt the question land in his chest like a cold coin. He kept his face blank. "Twice a week," he said, per governance cadence, with documented agendas. Grant's eyes flicked toward Vivian, then back. "A significant amount of FaceTime," he said. The words sounded casual, the subtext did not. Vivian's voice was flat. "This is a board-visible initiative. Close oversight is appropriate." Grant nodded as if he accepted that. "Of course," he said, then still calm. "And how were you selected, Ethan? Was there a formal internal posting?" Ethan's mouth went dry. He held Grant's gaze anyway. "Ms. Hart reviewed a process improvement proposal I submitted through my manager," he said. "She requested the document and chose to sponsor a pilot." Grant's smile returned pleasant. "Your manager did not support it." "No, sir." Grant tapped one finger lightly on the table. "Interesting," he said. "So, the CEO bypassed a middle manager to elevate an analyst to lead a cross-divisional initiative." Vivian's eyes did not move. "Yes," she said. Grant's gaze stayed on her. "That can create feelings," he said, voice still mild. "People worry about fairness, optics." Vivian leaned forward slightly. "If people worry about optics more than outcomes, they are in the wrong business," she replied. Grant's smile thinned. "Outcomes matter," he said. "So does governance." Vivian held his gaze without blinking. "Then you will be pleased," she said, "because everything about this pilot is governed, logged, auditable, and measurable." Grant stood. "Good," he said. "That is all I wanted to confirm." He shook Ethan's hand again. The grip was lighter this time, but the eyes stayed sharp. "Keep up the good work," Grant said. When he left, the room felt colder. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had not realized he was holding his breath. Vivian's jaw tightened once, then smoothed. "Continue," she said as if nothing had happened. Ethan did. They finished the meeting. Vivian signed off on next steps and asked one final question about client communication phrasing. Then she closed her tablet. "Naomi," she called. Naomi appeared immediately. "Schedule a review with internal audit," Vivian said. "I want an independent validation of pilot metrics and budget utilization." Naomi's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Vivian. "Today," Naomi said, already typing. "Yes," Vivian replied. "And schedule a review of Holloway's division performance over the past 18 months. Use our usual external consultant." Ethan blinked. "You are auditing him." Vivian's gaze cut to him. "I am establishing context," she said. "Grant does not ask questions to learn. He asks questions to collect." Ethan swallowed. "Because of me." Vivian's expression stayed controlled. "Because of me," she corrected. "He has been waiting for a weak point since I took this role. He believes the company belongs to people like him." Ethan's chest tightened. The apartment drawer with the envelope flashed in his mind. Lucy's green crane. Vivian in his kitchen saying safety was not optional. "This is going to get messy," Ethan said. "Why? Vivian's eyes held his. "Mess is manageable," she replied. "See, the sloppiness is not." Naomi's fingers moved fast over the keyboard. "Internal audit is available tomorrow morning," she said. "CFO also has a slot if you want finance oversight." Vivian nodded. "Both." Naomi hesitated for the smallest beat, then spoke. "Mr. Holloway requested your meeting logs," she said. Ethan felt heat rise in his face. Vivian's voice stayed calm. "He does not get them," she said. "Not informally. If he wants documentation, he can request it through governance channels." Naomi nodded once, understood. Ethan stared at the table surface, dark wood reflecting blurred window light. "He is going to assume there is something he said." Vivian's gaze stayed on him. "Let him," she replied. "Assumptions are cheap. Evidence is not." On 8, the shift in air was immediate. The noise, the cramped spaces, the smell of reheated lunch. Ethan walked back to his desk and sat down. His hands hovered over the keyboard, then landed. He opened his files and began tightening everything. Meeting notes, decision logs, budget approvals, email chains. Maya rolled her chair, closer eyes on his face. "You look like you just swallowed a nail." Ethan kept his voice low. Holloway sat in. Maya's eyes widened. "Cool Holloway." Ethan nodded. Jordan leaned over, coffee in hand. "He is a shark," Jordan said. "Smiles while he bites." Ethan did not answer. He clicked through spreadsheets, checking formulas, confirming sources. Maya watched him for a moment. "Are you okay?" she asked softer. Ethan thought of Lucy's school office. Lucy's small voice saying, "You forgot me." He thought of Vivian's hand on Lucy's back, careful and protective. He thought of Grant's question, "How often are you meeting?" "I am fine," he said, and then added, "Because Maya deserved truth that was safe. I just need the work to be perfect." At 2:58, Ethan's phone rang. Some bigoted phone alarm chimed. "Pick up Lucy, 3:15. He stood, immediately grabbed his coat and shut his laptop without even saving the open file. His heart had learned a new kind of fear, one that did not care about executives. Jordan lifted his eyebrows. "Where are you going?" "Home," Ethan said, then corrected himself. "School." Maya smiled faintly. "Good." Outside, rain fell in thin lines again, steady as breath. Ethan drove to Riverside with his shoulders tight and his eyes alert. He arrived early. He waited at the curb and watched children spill out, small bodies with bright backpacks, umbrellas bobbing like mushrooms. Lucy appeared and ran to the car, cheeks pink from cold. She climbed in and immediately leaned forward between the seats, searching his face. "What time is it?" she asked. Ethan showed her his phone. 3:13. Lucy nodded. "Okay," she said, and sat back like she could breathe again. At home, she dumped her backpack, pulled out a new pack of origami paper, and began folding. Ethan sat at the table with his laptop open, but his focus kept snagging on the memory of Grant's smile. Lucy slid a paper crane toward him, this one dark blue with silver streaks. "This one is for work," she said. Ethan touched it lightly. "Why?" Lucy shrugged. "Because big people forget that little people are important," she said, as if quoting someone older. Then she looked up, eyes sharp in that unsettling way she had. "Do you have a bad guy at work?" Ethan stared at her. "Where did you get that?" Lucy shrugged again. "In stories, there is always a bad guy." Ethan chose his words carefully. "There are people who want things," he said. "Sometimes they want them in ways that hurt other people." Lucy considered. "Is Ms. Hart nice?" Ethan thought of Vivian's voice in the school office. "Thank you for keeping her safe." "Yes," he said. "She is?" Lucy nodded, satisfied. "Okay," she said. "Then give her a crane too." Ethan watched Lucy fold with fierce concentration, her fingers pressing creases into shape, turning flat paper into something that held itself up. He listened to the rain. He listened to Lucy's quiet humming. He felt the drawer in the kitchen, the envelope hidden with batteries and permission slips like a secret weight. Later that night, after Lucy fell asleep, Ethan opened his laptop again and worked through documentation until his eyes burned. He created a folder labeled Governance and placed everything inside it with almost obsessive care. He printed meeting summaries and filed them. He set calendar reminders with extra buffers. He double-checked budget approvals. He did not allow himself to drift. Just before midnight, his phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. "Tomorrow 9:00, internal audit interview. Bring methodology and source files." Ethan stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone down beside the blue crane. The paper's wings caught the lamplight, silver lines shining faintly in the dark kitchen. Outside the window, rain slid down the glass in thin lines, steady as breath. Ethan's hands rested flat on the table until they stopped shaking. Ethan woke before his alarm, the kind of wakefulness that felt like a shove. Rain traced the bedroom window in thin, steady lines. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator cycling on and off like a distant engine. He lay still for a moment, eyes open, listening, then reached for his phone on the nightstand. Naomi's message sat there like a stamped appointment, 9 users. Internal audit interview. Bring methodology and source files. Ethan sat up, rubbed his face, and forced his body into motion. In the kitchen, he made coffee strong enough to taste like a warning. Lucy padded in a few minutes later in socks that never matched her hair, a soft mess, her eyes still half asleep. "Is today survival day too?" she asked. Ethan set 2 slices of bread in the toaster. "Today is interview day," he said. Lucy blinked. "With a bad guy." With auditors, Ethan corrected, then softened his voice. "They ask questions. It is their job." Lucy climbed onto her chair and watched him pour cereal. "Do they have badges?" "Yes." Lucy nodded, satisfied. She reached into her little paper box on the table and picked a crane white with silver dots. She set it beside his mug with care. "This one is for truth," she said, as if truth was a thing you could carry in your pocket. Ethan's throat tightened. He touched the crane lightly. "Thank you." Lucy squinted at him. "Do not forget," she said. "I will not," Ethan replied, and he meant it in every direction. He dropped her at school early, watched her run toward the doors with her rocket backpack bouncing and her crane box held tight under one arm. She did not look back. Ethan sat in the car for one extra breath, then drove downtown through rain that turned everything into a blur of headlights and wet pavement. At North Peak, he arrived before 9 and rode the elevator to 14 with a folder so thick it made his shoulder ache. Naomi met him at her desk with the same calm expression as always. "Conference room D," she said. "Down the hall. They are waiting." Ethan followed her gesture and walked alone, shoes swallowed by carpet. Conference room D was smaller than Vivian's usual space, but it carried the same quiet. Two people sat at the table. One was a woman in a navy suit with a tablet open. The other was David Lynn from finance, a familiar face from internal reviews, his tie loosened slightly, as if he had been pulled out of something else to be here. The woman rose. "Mr. Cole, I am Renee Baxter, internal audit." Ethan shook her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. No warmth, no threat, just process. Renee gestured to the chair. "We will walk through your pilot metrics, your methodology, and your budget utilization. We will need source files and documentation trails." Ethan placed his folder on the table and opened it to the first tab. His hands were steady, not because he felt calm, but because he had spent nights building steadiness into the paper. Renee started with simple questions. Where did the baseline data come from? How were clients selected? How did they define onboarding completion? Ethan answered in clear steps. He showed the control group analysis. He explained how they tracked error rates without double counting. David Lynn asked about cost allocations, vendor invoices, and time tracking. Ethan slid printouts across the table and watched them scan without expression. At one point, Renee paused and looked up. "You meet with Ms. Hart twice a week," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "Governance cadence for executive-sponsored initiatives. Every meeting has an agenda, minutes, and decisions logged." Renee tapped her tablet. "We will want to see those logs." Ethan nodded. "They are in the folder. Digital copies as well." David Lynn studied one of the sheets, then glanced at Ethan. "This is thorough," he said. Ethan held his gaze. "It has to be." Renee's mouth moved slightly, not a smile, but a shift that suggested respect for the work, even if respect was not part of her job description. "All right," she said. "Walk us through the retention uplift. That number is significant." Ethan did. He spoke about faster onboarding, reducing early regret. He spoke about fewer errors, lowering friction in the first 90 days. He spoke about proactive communication, keeping clients from feeling lost. He referenced specific survey responses and showed the timestamps and source systems. 2 hours later, Renee closed her tablet. "We will complete our review today," she said. "If we have follow-up questions, Naomi will coordinate." Ethan stood. His legs felt stiff. His shirt clung slightly at his back from the heat of focus. "Thank you," he said. Renee nodded once. "Good work, Mr. Cole." Outside the conference room, Naomi waited as if she had been there the whole time. She looked at Ethan's face, then at the folder in his hands. "They will file their summary by end of day," she said. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Vivian asked for this." Naomi's eyes stayed neutral. "Ms. Hart asked for what she needs." And Grant, Ethan said quietly. Naomi did not flinch at the name. Mr. Holloway asked for questions, she replied. Ms. Hart answered with documentation. Ethan followed Naomi back towards Suite A. The door was closed. Naomi tapped once and opened it. Vivienne stood by the windows with her phone at her ear, gaze fixed on the city like she was using the skyline to keep her face calm. She ended the call as Ethan entered and set the phone down with controlled precision. "How did it go?" she asked. Ethan placed the folder on the table. They pulled on everything he said. Methodology, budget definitions. They want meeting logs. They want the retention drivers. Vivienne nodded, as if he had said the sky was gray. "And you gave them what they asked for." "Yes." Vivienne's eyes held his for a moment. "Good," she said. Naomi stepped in just enough to speak. "Ms. Hart, the board has added a review to tomorrow's agenda," she said. "Pilot results, budget utilization, governance." Ethan's stomach dropped. The word board changed the air. Vivienne's expression did not change at all. "Noted," she said. "Block the morning." Naomi's eyes flicked to Ethan. "Mr. Cole will present," Naomi added. Ethan felt his mouth go dry. "Present to the board." Vivienne's gaze sharpened. "This is your work," she said. Your numbers, your process. You will speak for it. Ethan forced a breath in. Yes, he managed. Vivian's voice stayed calm. You will bring the audit trail. You will bring the source files. You will bring the story and the proof. Ethan nodded. He could feel the pulse in his wrists. He could also feel something else, a steady spine beneath the fear. He had built this. He knew every corner of it. That night, Ethan picked Lucy up on time. He cooked dinner, listened to her talk about a science video, and a kid who got in trouble for throwing erasers, and then sat at the kitchen table with his laptop until the clock blurred. The white crane with silver dots stayed beside his keyboard. He adjusted slides until the sentences sounded clean. He checked numbers until they stopped moving in his vision. He printed a packet and clipped it into a binder with tabs that clicked into place like locks. When his phone buzzed near midnight, he expected another message from Naomi. It was Vivian. Get some sleep. Ethan stared at the words simple and blunt as if sleep were a switch he could flip. He typed back, I am trying. Her reply came after a pause. So am I. The next morning, Ethan wore his navy suit and the tie that made him look like he belonged in rooms he had never entered. Rain fell lighter, more mist than storm, but the world still looked washed clean and sharp. He dropped Lucy at school, and she pressed her palm to the window from inside the building. Truth Crane, she called through the glass. Ethan lifted 2 fingers in salute and walked back to his car. On 14, the boardroom sat in the corner, with windows on 2 sides, water, and city spread out like a map. The table was dark polished, and long enough to make distance a statement. 8 chairs were filled when Ethan entered. He recognized David Lynn. He recognized Renee Baxter seated near the end tablet ready. Grant Holloway sat opposite where Ethan would stand. Posture relaxed, smile already in place. Vivienne sat at the head of the table. Her face was composed, eyes, steady hair, perfect. When Ethan arrived, she did not offer a look that could be interpreted as support or affection. She gave him only the clean professionalism of her role. Mr. Cole will present the pilot results, Vivian said. Ethan connected his laptop to the display system. His hands did not shake. He felt as if his fear had condensed into focus. He began with context. Baseline onboarding time, baseline error rates, baseline retention. He showed the map of the old workflow handoffs layered like bad architecture. He moved to the redesign principles and the new workflow cleaner, fewer breaks, 1 owner per client, automated checks, proactive communication. He let the numbers speak, but he gave them a spine. He told them what the client felt when the process broke. He told them what changed when the process stopped breaking. Questions came fast. A board member asked about sample size. Ethan answered with confidence intervals and control comparisons. Another asked about technology risk. Ethan showed mitigation steps and dependency checks. David Lynn asked about cost recovery. Ethan walked through the calculation line by line and watched the heads around the table tilt forward in attention. Grant waited until the room had warmed to the work. Then he leaned in. Let's talk budget, he said. $340,000. That is more than double our typical pilot spend. Ethan nodded. Because typical pilots aim for small improvements, he said. This aimed for structural change. Structural change requires deeper testing and broader data. The audit team validated our utilization this week. Renee's stylus moved. She did not look up. Grant's smile stayed pleasant. Audits can validate spending, he said. They do not validate judgment. Vivian's eyes did not move from Grant. Ethan felt her stillness beside him like a wall. Grant turned to Ethan again. How often did you meet with Vivian during this pilot? Ethan felt the trap and stepped around it. Twice weekly, as documented governance cadence, he said. Every meeting had an agenda and minutes. Decisions are logged. Internal audit has access. Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. That is a lot of access to the CEO for an analyst. Ethan kept his voice level. It is the access required for a board-visible initiative with enterprise impact. Grant leaned back, smile returning. And how were you selected for this role exactly? Was there a posting, a formal competitive process? Vivian's voice cut in calm and cold. He was selected because he wrote the proposal and built the methodology, she said. He was selected because he delivered results. Grant glanced at her. Optics matter, he said softly. Vivian held his gaze. Outcomes matter more, she replied. If you want to discuss governance, we have governance. If you want to discuss the quality of the work, we have results. Ethan continued. He showed client testimonials with identifiers removed. He showed the satisfaction uptick in the service team. He showed the scaling plan in phases with clear triggers and stop points. He kept each answer short. He kept each claim tied to evidence. When he finished, silence sat on the table for half a second. Ethan could hear the faint hush of the building's ventilation and the soft tap of rain against glass. David Lynn spoke first. Internal audit validated the methodology and the budget trail, he said. The numbers are solid. The business case is strong. A woman near the end of the table nodded. I want quarterly reviews during scale, she said. But yes. Another board member added, we should move quickly. Competitors are not waiting. Grant's smile thinned. I still have concerns about precedent, he began. Vivian's voice stayed even. Your concerns are noted, she said. This is not precedent. This is performance. If we punish performance because it disrupts comfort, we will deserve the stagnation that follows. The vote came without ceremony. Hands raised, heads nodded. Approval carried the room. Grant did not vote against it. He abstained, his expression smooth. When the meeting ended, board members stood and filed out in pairs. A few shook Ethan's hand and thanked him. Renee Baxter gave him a single nod that felt like a stamp of completion. Grant left last without saying anything to Ethan. His smile was gone. When the door closed, only Ethan and Vivienne remained in the boardroom. The city outside looked washed clean water, a flat sheet of gray. Vivienne stood by the windows, her back to him for a moment. Then she turned. You did well, she said. Ethan let out a breath that felt like it came from a week ago. We did, he replied. Vivienne's eyes held his. The room was quiet enough for honesty to feel loud. I am aware, Ethan said slowly, that people will look for stories that are easier than numbers. Vivienne's jaw tightened. Let them, she said. Ethan stepped closer, not touching her. Not yet. I do not want Lucy to pay for adult politics, he said. Vivienne's expression softened by a fraction. Neither do I, she replied. Ethan swallowed. The words came out before he could sand them down. I care about you, he said. I care about her seeing you and trusting you. I do not want that trust used as ammunition. Vivienne's eyes flashed with something raw, quickly controlled. I care about you too, she said quiet, and about Lucy. The admission hung between them. No flourish, no performance, just truth spoken in a room built for power. Vivienne's voice steadied. We keep our boundaries intact, she said, not because we are ashamed, because we are protecting what matters. Ethan nodded, pulse loud in his ears. For how long? Vivienne looked at him, then reached out and took his hand, firm and brief, at first, then held it. 6 months, she said. Long enough for the work to stand on its own without anyone claiming it, leaned on anything else. Ethan squeezed her fingers once. Okay, he said. Vivienne let his hand go control, returning like a coat pulled on. Go, she said softly. Pick up Lucy. Ethan gathered his binder and walked out the corridor outside, quieter than it had any right to be. He rode the elevator down and felt the building's hum return around him. At Riverside, Lucy ran to the car as soon as she saw him. She climbed in, cheeks pink, eyes bright. Truth Crane worked, she announced as if it had been a spell. Ethan looked at her in the rearview mirror, then reached into his pocket and placed the small white crane on the dashboard beside the blue one. The paper wings trembled slightly, with the car's idle steady as breath. Part 10. That night, Lucy fell asleep on the couch, with her shoes still on a paper crane pinned gently under her palm, like she was guarding it. Ethan lifted her, carefully carried her to bed, and tucked the blanket under her chin. Her hair fanned across the pillow, damp curls at the edges from the day's rain. In the kitchen, the apartment lights hummed softly. Ethan rinsed Lucy's lunch container hands, moving on autopilot, and tried to let his heartbeat settle into something normal. A quiet knock came at the door. Ethan opened it to Vivienne. She stood in the hallway in a dark coat, hair smooth, cheeks touched with cold. Her eyes found his and held. No office table between them, no screen, no agenda. I came by, she said. I know, Ethan replied and stepped aside. Vivienne entered, gaze flicking once to the bowl of cranes on the coffee table, then to Lucy's closed bedroom door. She moved through the space like she was learning its dimensions by instinct, not measurement. Her coat came off. Her shoes stayed on. She stood in the living room for a moment, quiet. You were good in there, she said finally. Ethan exhaled. You were. Vivienne's mouth tightened, not quite a smile. Grant will keep looking, she said. I know, Ethan answered. Silence sat between them, full of the things they were not saying. Vivienne's eyes softened when she spoke again. How is she, Vivienne? Estigo. Uisturi. Asked voice low. Asleep, Ethan said. She told herself the crane worked. Vivienne glanced toward the bedroom door. She believes in what she makes, she said, and her tone carried something like envy. Ethan watched her for a beat, then said, thank you. Vivienne's gaze returned to him. For what? For seeing her, Ethan said. For not making her an inconvenience. Vivian's jaw flexed once controlled. She is not an inconvenience, she said. She is a person. Ethan nodded. He felt the truth of it in his chest, solid and heavy. Vivian stepped closer, close enough that the air changed. Her hand rose, paused near his sleeve, then lowered again, as if she had remembered where cameras could be. Go get sleep, she said. Ethan's voice was quiet. You too. Vivian looked at him for a long moment, then turned and left with the same careful precision she brought to everything. The door clicked shut. Ethan stood in the dim living room and listened to the building settle around him. Weeks passed, then months measured in calendars and rainstorms, and Lucy's growing collection of cranes. Ethan's pilot expanded the way, a crack became a line, then a clear opening. He moved up to a glass-walled office, on 12 still close enough to the real work to hear it. His paycheck changed enough that the banking app stopped feeling like a daily threat. He still checked it sometimes out of old habit, then closed it and shook his head at himself. Vivian kept coming always after hours, always quiet. She parked farther down the block when she did not want anyone in the building to notice. Lucy stopped pretending not to notice anything. She started setting out 3 forks without being asked. In April, North Peak hosted a fundraiser at a downtown hotel, the kind of place where the lobby smelled like polished wood and lemon peel. Ethan wore a suit that fit him properly for the first time in years. The collar still felt wrong, like it belonged to someone else. He was standing near a table of silent auction items when a woman approached him, silver hair, immaculate diamonds catching light with every movement. Her smile was polite enough to be sharp. You are Ethan Cole, she said. Ethan straightened. Yes. She extended her hand. Margot Hart. Ethan shook it. Her grip was cool and firm like the room itself. I have heard about you, Margot said, gaze sliding over his suit, his posture, his hands. My daughter does not often take a personal interest in anyone. Ethan kept his face neutral. Ms. Hart takes interest in results, he said. Margot's smile did not change. And your daughter, she said lightly, as if discussing weather. Lucy, 7, folding cranes. Ethan felt something cold move through him. She likes paper, he said. Margot leaned in a fraction. Vivian has very few vulnerabilities, she murmured. It would be unfortunate if someone mistook access for entitlement. Ethan met her gaze. I am not entitled to anything, he said. I care about your daughter. I care about Lucy. That is all. Margot's eyes held his for a beat. Then she stepped back, smile returning to its surface shape. Do give Vivian my regards, she said, and walked away as if the conversation had been pleasant. Later, in a quiet hallway outside the ballroom, Ethan told Vivian what her mother said. Vivian's expression went still. She collects leverage the way some people collect art, Vivian said. She knows about Lucy, Ethan replied. Vivian's jaw tightened. Then she has been watching, she said. She looked at him, eyes steady. I will not let her weaponize my life. The disclosure meeting happened in a clean, bright boardroom, with coffee that nobody drank. Vivian spoke with the same calm precision she used for earnings calls. She stated facts. She stated timing. She stated governance adjustments. She did not ask permission. David Lynn listened, expression unreadable, then nodded. Your disclosure is noted, he said. Reporting lines will change to remove conflict. Ethan will report to Sonia McKay. Sonia McKay, board chair, glanced up from her notes. I can take oversight, she said. Her tone was practical, as if moving people in an org chart was what she did for sport. One board member shifted and frowned, discomfort rising. This is risky, he said. Vivian looked at him. Risk is unmanaged secrecy, she replied. This is management. Silence followed. Then agreement one by one, because the work had already spoken loudly enough that gossip sounded small beside it. That evening, Ethan picked Lucy up from after school. She climbed into the car with a book on planets open on her lap, and did not look surprised when he cleared his throat. Lucy, he said. She glanced up, eyes calm. Yes. Vivian is going to be around more, Ethan said carefully. Not just work, with us. Lucy stared at him for a beat, then went back to her book as if he had told her they were buying more cereal. Okay, she said. Ethan blinked. That is it. Lucy looked up again, brows lifted in mild impatience. Dad, she said like she was explaining something obvious I already knew. You look at her like the prince looks at the princess in your movies. I do not watch those, Ethan said automatically. Lucy's mouth curved. You watch them, she said, and then added softer. I like her. She listens. Vivian came that night and did not park a block away. She walked through the front door like she belonged there. Lucy ran to her and hugged her around the waist without hesitation. You are here, Lucy announced. Vivian's hands paused for a fraction of a second, then settled on Lucy's shoulders. I am, she said, voice warm. Summer brought a 3-bedroom house near Green Lake, with a small yard and a porch that caught the late light. On moving day boxes sat stacked like bad architecture. Lucy ran from room to room, claiming spaces and declaring where her telescope should go. Vivienne directed movers with calm authority, then knelt to help Lucy tape a paper sign to her bedroom door. Lucy's lab it read an uneven marker. Badge required, Lucy said solemnly, and pressed her plastic ID to the sign. To the sign. Beep! Vivienne's mouth twitched. Access granted, she said. In October, career day arrived with rain that smelled like wet leaves. Vivienne stood in a classroom full of 7-year-olds and spoke about solving problems, building teams, making decisions. The kids asked blunt questions. Lucy sat up straight like she was guarding a secret. A boy in the back raised his hand. "Are you Lucy's mom?" he asked. The room went quiet. Vivienne's eyes flicked to Lucy. Lucy answered first, voice steady. "She is my family," she said. "Not my mom, just my family." Vivienne's throat worked. She nodded once, then continued, and her voice sounded the same, but her eyes looked brighter. On a rainy evening not long after Ethan stood on the porch of their house, with a mug of coffee warming his hands, Lucy's first blue crane was framed on the wall inside wing slightly uneven paper aged at the creases. Vivienne stood beside him, without an umbrella hair catching mist coat collar turned up. Lucy's laughter floated from the living room, where she was building a crane runway out of couch cushions. Vivienne leaned her shoulder lightly against Ethan's. The contact was small. It was everything. Ethan looked through the window and saw Lucy glance up and wave. He lifted his hand and waved back. Vivienne did too. Inside the hallway, light clicked on with a soft, familiar sound. Ethan's keys sat heavy in his pocket. Not a key card, not a badge, just keys to a front door that opened into warmth. Lucy's voice called from inside. "Beep!" she shouted, delighted. "Access granted. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.